Walk it in. Here. Here. She might.
Dr. Macri is here. She sits with Mrs. Kelleher, Mr. Witrinzik, Joe Costa, Joe Paletta, Mike Berger, Jack Buckus, Emily Cifuentes, Mike Segan, Mike Walsh. Then I have Timothy Post, Alan Schumann, Paula Luna, and Jack Henning.
Okay, thank you. Just a reminder before we get started that if you are speaking, please make sure your microphone's on. Speak straight into the microphone so people at home can hear us. All right, agenda. Any changes or discussion on the agenda? Do you have a motion to approve the agenda? Someone second it?
Second.
All in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries. Agenda approved. Minutes. Did everyone get a chance to look at the minutes from the last meeting? Any discussion? I'll take a motion to approve when you're ready.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the October 5th meeting.
Thank you, Matt. Is there a second? Thank you, Ken. Any other discussion? All in favor of the approving the minutes from the October 5th meeting, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, that passed. Moving right along. Any public comments? Do we have any email submissions? Okay. No email submissions. Moving on. So my update is going to be really quick today because we have a very big schedule and I want to get right into it. Just a couple of things. The last meeting we had talked about the purchasing policy and our involvement and all that. All that's been squared away and approved. Yay. So we can move forward with that and put that behind us. And eventually we'll get our bylaws when we get to it updated to reflect all that. And we did have a meeting with the state I don't know, OSG, those people. Really, really nice people on the call. We had a great conversation. A couple of concerns did come up that we're going to work through. One is the resolution to allow the superintendent to go forward with the project. In the town council notes, it did not mention the central office in that resolution, though that was the intent, and I believe they did talk about it. So we may or may not have to clean that up. It's kind of up in the air right now, but just something to note. And the second thing is that our appropriation did not detail out the costs for the middle school and the central office. So we're just going to need a nice little letter from our BOE finance director, and to write to them to basically spell that out. Like, just, this is the total cost, this is the cost for the building committee, for the middle school, and this is the cost for the central office. So as soon as we get that out to them, they're going to have a meeting to discuss, and hopefully it's reviewed and approved and we can move forward. There's 3 tiers of reviews that have to go through. The first 2 passed with flying colors. We did a good job. It's the 3rd tier, the most difficult one, I guess, that it's her job to, Michelle Dixon's her job to actually go through and make sure all the T's are crossed, and she was really good. She caught this. So hopefully we can get it all squared away and it's not a big issue. I'm not even going to go towards worst case scenario, because worst case scenario is not going to happen, right, Jack? We're not going down that road. So hopefully we can get our ducks in a row here and clean all that up. And that's all I had to report, because everything else, we had a bunch of school tours. We had other side meetings. Matt had a meeting. We're going to talk all about that throughout the agenda. So let's just get right into it with.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, you may.
About the meeting. So that those 3 levels of reviews, that is to put us on the short list for the legislative review.
That you're right. Then that goes to the governor, and they sign off on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Did I miss anything? Priority list. Thank you. It's the priority list. We want to be on the priority list.
Yes.
Did I miss anything on that, Jack? That pretty much sums it up, right? There was some discussion about the square footage and the auditorium that we need to figure out. Maybe we'll talk about that during the whole budget discussion because I was kind of confused on how that worked. All right, let's move on to Perkins Eastman update. You got a presentation for us. I like presentations. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Good to be here tonight. We do have quite a lot of things to talk about, so we're going to move fairly quickly, and we can always come back with some questions and answers or look at a different slide or two. For the record, I'm Joe Costa with Perkins Eastman. I have with me to my right Mike Berger, design principal, Joe Collada, project manager, Mike Segan, our landscape architect. Mike Walsh from CES has the night off because we're not really talking about mechanical systems tonight, but he'll be back with a lot of stuff to talk about in the next couple meetings. Tonight's agenda is pretty long. Let's see here. We're going to talk a little bit about how the survey and the base drawings are going. We're going to give you an update on building areas and some of the things that we discovered by looking at some of the estimates and some of the other information from the previous study. We're going to talk a little bit about a construction market update and what's happening in the state of Connecticut with pricing and some of the increases that we've seen in the last 6 months or so. The design team is going to spend some time talking about site location options as well as the conversation that occurred with local officials, I think yesterday, right? Yesterday, which was some very good information. We'll give you a schedule update, let you know where we are, and we are fast approaching the end of the phase, right around Christmas. So we do need to pick that up a little bit and get some design work going. And we'll talk about some of the next steps and some of the things that we'll be doing in the next few weeks and within the next month or so. So what's happening? Survey work is almost done. Apparently, we're expecting to get at least an initial base survey at the end of this week. I'm hoping to see those files by Friday. And then what we'll do is we'll distribute it to the town as well as our consultants so they can get started with their work. The information that you're going to see tonight regarding the site was based on site observations as well as whatever information we can get from the GIS and aerial photographs. So we're not going to talk a lot about utilities because we don't know exactly where they are. Once we get the survey, we'll have a better sense of where those underground pipes come from and where they exit and if there's any drainage structures, and that'll play into the discussion about where the building footprint should go, parking lots, ball fields, that kind of thing. But right now, that information is not yet on the maps. The other thing is we've had all of the existing drawings scanned and digitized, and we're now in the process of converting those existing plans into base drawings that will be used for the demolition and the abatement work. And once we get those digitized, we'll get that team going and started with that work. It's not really as urgent as some of the other stuff we're doing because we're not going to be knocking that building down for at least a year and a half, 2 years. But we want to start getting our arms around the costs and the scope of that work because that's going to play into the overall budget that we have to build this building. So that's basically where we are and doing right now. So we're going to give an update on the building area, some of the things that we discovered as we're getting through the analysis and having lots of conversations with the educators, as well as looking at some of the previous data. Yeah. Sarge. Thank you, Mike. So starting with the original ed specs, so that's that's where we're all starting. The net area in the original ed spec for the middle school was 62,648 square feet. And the previous team indicated a core circulation area of about 20,665 square feet, which is a multiplier of about 1.3, and we're going to talk about what that means a little bit more. But when you add those two numbers together, it becomes an 83,313 square foot number, which was listed as the interior of the exterior walls. Now, I'll pause for a moment and explain why that number is important. That's the number that the state of Connecticut uses to determine the eligibility based on the size and the number of children that you have in this particular school. So it's a very important number, and that's why it's listed here. We typically use the exterior of the exterior wall, in other words, the gross area of the building, when we're calculating how much a building costs. Okay, so that's an important distinction, right? So you have one number that talks about the eligibility of the building from a grant standpoint, and then you have the other number which is useful for determining the cost of a building. Now, there's other things that play into it, types of materials and all kinds of stuff that play into that number, but generally that's the number that will be used to create takeoffs and things like that. So that's important to remember. The total building area, as I just mentioned, the exterior wall is generally calculated by adding about 5% to the inside of the exterior wall dimension that you see there. That 5% is kind of a historic number. We've done lots and lots of studies over the years, and generally that's about how much extra area is added to, in essence, put the skin on the building. Right, and that number has been creeping up more and more every year as the dimension of the exterior walls get thicker because of insulation and other factors associated with code requirements. So that wall is getting a little bit thicker, and generally it's about 5%. Okay, so that's the number. Now, what happens is if you add 5% to the 83,313 number, it's about 4,166 square feet. It ends up with a total building area of around 87,479 square feet. Yes, Roseanne?
Just quick questions. That's not based on the actual perimeter of your design options, right?
No, it is
That
not.
number could go up or down depending on what the perimeter is.
Yes. So all of these numbers right now are based on the program, and they're what we would call target numbers, right? So until Mike and his team actually creates a design and measures the building, we won't know precisely what the gross area is. The net area is going to be very close to the program area because those are rooms that are going to be sized to meet those ed specs, right? So the collection of those rooms will not change, but the configuration of the corridors, passageways, elevators, stairs, all that stuff that contributes to that net to gross multiplier is all variable and all depends upon the final design and the configuration of the building. So 87,479 would be the sort of target square footage. Now, I also want to note that the April 2022 concept estimate was based on the 83,313 number, not the total building area. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy on how the costs were calculated. It was actually calculated on a smaller size building.
And the core circulation, that multiplier 1.33, is that a standard?
Talk about that a little bit. Our experience with middle schools and generally modern schools, we have found that our net to gross multiplier is a little bit higher. It's closer to about 1.4, okay, 0. And again, that number will depend on the efficiency of the final design and the configuration of the final design. And so what we typically will do is at each phase, we'll keep track of that net to gross multiplier and report that to the committee. Now, it's important to understand that because of code and because of accessibility and because of technology and because of all these things that contribute to the core size, a lot of that net to gross ratio is a result of requirements. So some of them will be discretionary, some of them will be required by code. So we'll have to keep track of that.
This is actually 1.4. You do the math on this.
Oh, yeah, so Mike just pointed out to me that the total building area, 87,479 per the original ed spec, is actually very close to 1.4. So it's not that far off, right? It's that number at the bottom here.
I'm sorry, what's close to 1.4? That
Yeah.
87,479.
Yeah, you see this, right, this number right
Yeah,
here?
yeah.
If you compare that number with that number,
Yeah.
you do the math, that's about 1.4 multiplier.
Yeah, so the 1.33 was not accounting for the exterior walls. So
Oh.
once you add those exterior walls in there, that gives you an actual net to
Right.
gross multiplier. So you do the math of 62,648
Right, times,
into 87, and it's 1.396.
Yeah.
So it's
it's close.
it's close.
Right? So the other thing is that the estimate was based on these numbers back here. So just, keep that in mind, right? And that estimate in April listed the construction costs, which included the site work, the demolition, contingencies, escalation, all the CM stuff, at about $579 a square foot. Okay? So it's a pretty good budget.
Sorry, just out of curiosity, I know you said the 5% is standard. I'm just trying to think about, we don't know the exact dimensions, but 5% thickness, if you have a 400-foot run span on a building, 5% of that's 20 extra feet. I'm not figuring out where the thickness of the wall can be that large. I mean, the thickness of the inside walls, that doesn't matter.
No,
right?
Matt, it's not the thickness of the inside walls. The state doesn't care about that.
Right,
They
right.
just
It's
care
just the
about
exterior.
the exterior wall thickness.
I guess maybe it does. It ends up buffing it out. I guess, right? The thicker your inside walls,
Well-
it does end up adding.
So if you
Yeah,
s-
okay.
right, so
All
if
right,
you
yeah, that's
so
what it
if you
does.
imagine a school has lots of walls, right?
Yeah.
Because we want classrooms with windows, right?
Hmm.
So the nature of the building type lends itself to a lot of perimeter versus the amount of area. So
Yeah.
that's how that 5% came about.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on.
Just a quick question, though.
Yeah. Ouch.
Thank you. So which of these numbers is the state looking at for reimbursement?
They're looking at this number right here,
Okay.
the inside of the exterior walls.
So we had, well, what this is saying is that we had 3 different groups give us an estimate in the spring that did not have walls on a building.
I just know of one estimate that I saw.
So,
that-
so
I
let
think,
me back up then.
I think that's something that Jack would have to pipe in on.
Yeah, if I can
Yeah.
clarify.
Okay.
When a grant application is submitted, the state wants to see one number. And we can take the space standard number measured to the inside of the outside wall and add 5% to the cost per square foot to compensate for that exterior wall number and still give them a number of square feet that they're looking for and capture the same amount of dollars. So to say that the estimate that was done at grant time had the 83 and not an 87 number does not mean that the estimate was wrong. Because they're, X plus 5% or Y plus 5% is still going to give you a bottom line number that's on target.
But we were using the estimate to go to referendum to pay for this project. And that's where I'm confused on, is why would they give us an estimate that didn't include the total project cost?
Unless we had the estimator here to look at his math and tell us where he put that 5% factor, or if he forgot it altogether, which I doubt with 3 different estimates that anybody would have forgotten about it completely. But the square footage, when they evaluate your grant application, they're going to evaluate it based on the number that we know is 83,000.
Okay.
That does not mean that the cost was not captured.
Okay, all right, so I just wanted to make sure I understood that. So I get interior versus exterior measurements, that's fine. I just want to make sure that when we do start talking about budget, that we know we have walls in the budget.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
have-
guarantee you we'll
Sorry,
have,
sorry, just putting it.
we'll
I
have
mean-
walls in the
Calling it like
budget,
it is.
and when we complete the building, it'll have exterior
Thank
walls.
you.
I think we just need to, I think what we need to answer
so-
a question is, was the estimate that we got include the
Yeah.
walls or not?
Yeah.
I'm
yeah.
I'm
So
assuming
is
that
it
three
just-
different estimators coming up with really the same numbers
I'd
would
be
tell me.
shocked.
I mean, this was the.
Oh, you've got
the
them.
most detailed estimate we had in terms of breakdowns,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
10 pages. So we can look in here. I quick glance, I don't see anything that specifically calls out, exterior
Exterior
wall
walls.
load or
Yeah.
anything. It's based on 83,000 square feet for the multiples.
Right.
So maybe it's buried in
Well,
somewhere else or not.
While they're doing their presentation, I'll run out to the car and I'll get my file and I'll check the
Yeah.
estimate.
All right, let's continue.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Thanks.
All right. So, as we mentioned before, the net to gross multiplier of 1.4 is close, right? If you add the 5% factor, and what these numbers do, this 87,707 and 87,479 show that, right? So this bottom number here is the 62,648 number, which is the net square footage, which is the inside of the rooms that make up the school, times 1.4 to get you that 87,707 number, right? So it's very close, right? Makes sense. Okay. And this next shows that, those two numbers side by side. Okay? So far, so good, right? Okay. So we also looked at the central office, right? Because the central office is not a school, so it has a slightly different net to gross multiplier. It's a little bit less than the 1.4 because of the nature of the kind of spaces that you have in an office versus what you have in a school, right? Plus, understand this, that some of the spaces that are designated within the middle school are actually going to serve both the middle school and the central office. For example, an electrical room, or an IT closet, or a boiler room, or a fan room, or something like that, it might be actually residing in the middle school part of the building, and so it's not going to count towards the net to gross multiplier of the central office. Okay, so there's a little bit more efficiency. with
And
that
one or
regard.
more walls, maybe actual interior walls too.
Yes, and the walls may be thinner. You know, it's a different building type. It's a different animal altogether. All right. So what this diagram talks about is that the net area is about 4,750. That's adding up all of the spaces that were listed in the spec, and they indicated a core circulation factor of about 840 square feet, which is about 1.17, which is pretty low. And they listed the 5990 square footage. And by the way, just like the 83,313 number was used for the middle school calculation, they use that number for the central office calculation. Okay, same methodology, same estimator. So if we take that a little bit further and we look at the 4750 number and we multiply it times 1.3, remember at the middle school it was 1.4, it's a little bit less, it's about 30%. We end up with an anticipated building size of a little bit bigger than 5590. It's more like 6175. That would be the anticipated size of the central office. Now, again, it's only a target number. The actual design, layout, configuration, number of corridors, all that kind of stuff is going to vary that number. And we'll report that as we're developing our designs. And we'll keep track of that. All right? So the other thing, the estimate for the central office is a little bit less dollar per square foot. It's about 408, just under 409 dollar per square foot, which is a pretty good budget also. And I think part of that was because some of the site work and some of the utility work was captured within the middle school, and it's going to serve both buildings. So the estimator did not actually attribute parts of the site work to that building. They sort of kept that mostly in the middle school, which makes sense because what we don't want to do is make that building more expensive than it needs to because your eligibility is going to be 50% your normal rate. So the more that can be captured within the middle school, the better your reimbursement is, right? And that'll be something that we're going to be addressing with the state as we go through each and every phase. All right? Any questions so far? No, good. So at this point, I want to just talk a little bit about the construction market and what's going on and why we're concerned about these square footages and why we're talking about these numbers, right? Because everything is going to be based on these numbers. We're not going to have a lot of opportunity to take or control our costs because the site is going to be what it is, the demolition is going to be what it is, and a lot of other costs are going to be what they are. We're not going to have a lot of flexibility. Where we're going to have the most flexibility is the building itself, right? And how big it is, what it's made out of, types of systems that are going to be in the building, those kinds of things are the part of the project that we're going to have the most control over in being able to meet our overall project budget. So we want to keep a very close look on how much square footage we're building and the systems in there and what we're building this building out of. And that's why I'm mentioning it. But the market has changed significantly since the April 2022 estimate that was put forth. And I just want to go through a few items of what actually changed. So in conversations with our estimator and others, almost all schools right now are bidding over reconciled estimates. And right now there are several schools that are out to bid. Torrington High School is out to bid. Farmington High School, I believe, has been bid, and they're in the process of reconciling it. Killingly Middle School is about to be bid shortly. There are some concerns about that particular budget as well. The volatile market does add a level of risk and management costs to the two projects. So that's one of the things that's contributing to the nervousness of the market, and that's being reflected in the numbers that are coming in for various trades. Just sort of keep that in mind. Just as a side note, Farmington High School and Torrington High School are both CSG projects. They're the OPM on the job, and both are bidding around 6 to 10% over budget right now. Okay, so we got to keep that in mind. So what are the factors contributing to cost increases? One of the biggest factors is mechanical and fire protection systems. Since April, we have seen in some of those trades 15 to 20% price escalation on some of those products. And the other thing what's happening in those trades is they're only holding the bids valid for 2 weeks, so that if communities can't act fast enough, a lot of those bids don't last longer than 2 weeks because of the changing in the marketplace, because of the price escalation that those trades are seeing. There's also some very long lead times and availability. For example, switch gear, that's the electrical, big piece of equipment where all the power comes in. In some projects, we're seeing 60-week lead time to get those kind of products. We're seeing that on generators, emergency generators, and generally products that have chips in them. We're seeing long lead times. Of course, our building is likely to be built out of steel. And as a note, since April, a ton of steel has gone from $5,500 a ton to $6,600 a ton. That's just pure market-driven costs. We're not sure exactly what the Florida disaster is going to have on these prices, but we expect some materials to be heading down there instead of being used around here that could contribute to the overall material shortage and long lead times. Concrete. We're going to have concrete footings, foundations, slabs, things like that, is up from $30 to $50. The price escalation is $30 to $50 a cubic yard, depending on what you're buying and how much you're buying and how it's being placed. That's just concrete. Roofing. We probably heard a lot about roofing, and one of the contributors for roofing cost is the fact that a lot of products are made of petroleum. And we all have seen what petroleum has done at the pumps and filling up our oil tanks at home. That has certainly contributed a lot to the overall price increases in roofing, and also insulation shortages, which is creating price gouging if you can even find the insulation. And I've heard that from many, many trades. We're doing quite a few roofs right now, and we're hearing a lot of complaints about not being able to get insulation for our roof systems. Another area is aluminum glass systems. The price of aluminum extrusions and sheet material has also increased significantly since April. Let's go to the next one. Other factors: masonry, fabrication shortages, and trade labor to actually set the masonry products in place is also an issue. Gypsum and metal stud increases have gone up every month. In fact, since April, a 37-cent per linear foot stud now costs $1.77. Exactly the same product now costs X number times more than it did in April. General trades, labor shortages across multiple disciplines, and you're going to hear labor shortages affecting everybody. FF&E cost increases are also showing up in the marketplace, largely because of the supply chain issues. Most of the FF&E that we're buying is actually fabricated in China, and that's shipped to the United States, and that shipping cost has skyrocketed, and that's being reflected in the per unit price of a chair, a table, a desk, whatever we're going to buy. Now, we don't have to worry about that right now because FF&E is several years in the future, but that is going to contribute to the overall price of the job. And then lastly, site work, right? Site work, because of the infrastructure spending materials rise, has gone up 10 to 15% since April. And site work was extremely expensive at the beginning of this year. It's just gotten even more expensive. And that's an important factor when we talk about the various options that you're going to look at in a few minutes. We want to make sure that whatever option we pick has to be looked at with the lens of cost effectiveness. Okay, so that's an important thing to remember. Now, what does this all mean, right? Well, yeah, sorry, Shannon.
When you mentioned that Farmington and I forget the other school that are coming in Torrington 6 to 10% over their budget, is that their budget plus their contingencies coming in 6 to 10% over, or is that not the contingency, the escalation, whatever was in their budget for escalation?
Yeah.
How is that factoring into that?
My understanding, Shannon, it was from the reconciled budget. So when the phase of the design was completed, the two came together, and that was the reconciled budget before bidding. So bidding periods, generally are 4 to 6 weeks. What I don't know exactly is how their contingency, and whether they had an escalation contingency or a bidding contingency, how that affected.
Okay.
But 6 to 10% is pretty high.
So this was based off of a schematic?
No, that was based on completed construction documents right before bidding.
Right before bidding.
Right before bidding. Remember, 4 to 6 weeks generally is the bidding period. So
it was a construction design. They went out to bid, and then construction design did an estimate, went out to bid, and then 4 to 6 weeks later, it came back at that.
yes, at the higher amount. And what I don't know is how they were able to move forward with that increase. Did they use contingency money? Did they use a combination of VE and contingency money? I just don't have that detail. I'm going to try to find out for you.
And I think they started their whole process last year, so they probably put their budget for referendum together.
Well, this was after referendum. This is based off the construction design.
Yeah.
I know, but I'm saying so they were approved by, it sounds like they were approved for a certain amount,
Yes.
and the reconciled was 6 to 10% above that, right?
The bid was 6 to 10% above the reconciled amount. So the last estimate they did right before they went out to bid did not hold up through the bidding period.
Oh,
Okay, and you're right. The budgets that were formed for those projects predated, I think, the kind of inflation and escalation that we've been seeing in labor and materials. So, you know, they probably were looking at budgets of the marketplace back then and using a standard, you know, 4.5 or 5% escalation per year, and that has been exceeded by the market. Okay.
Joe, just a quick comment. We're on the Farmington High School project, and there are a number of ad alternates worked into the bid to give the town flexibility when the numbers came in.
Thank you, Mike. So what does this all mean? Well, we're normally focused on cost-effective design and budgets. What this means is that we collectively, as a team and as a committee, have to have an enhanced focus on cost control. So every decision that we make has to be looked at through the lens of the most effective cost control. We have to keep an eye on the building area and how we design this building and how we deal with the net to gross multiplier. We have to look for space efficiencies wherever we possibly can. There might be some creative solutions on planning and how we use those rooms, and you know, we're going to be meeting actually with the educators tomorrow to go through some detailed deep dives on all of these departments and all of these spaces, and so we're going to be looking for some efficiencies. What we don't want to do, obviously, is just make wholesale slashes and cuts. We want to make sure that the building is designed in accordance with the ed specs, and that serves the town very well. You have a teaming approach at the middle school, which works extremely well, and it's been very, very successful. We don't want to mess with that. We don't want to change that in any way. We want to make sure that that stays with the program. You have a pretty large auditorium. That's also a piece that we can't touch. So there's lots of components in the building that make it a robust program that we want to make sure that we preserve, but at the same time, it all has to come in within that budget. So that's the task that we have to do. So besides the building area and the materials, we also want to keep an eye on the mechanical systems, electrical systems, plumbing systems, make sure that those are appropriately selected, and Mike and his team, Mike Walsh and his team, will be presenting the pros and cons and the comparative costs of various systems. Of course, everything has to be to code, and it has to be sustainable and all that kind of stuff. So, we're going to be working hard to make sure all of that works together. We want to limit the site development, and also what we want to do is control temporary improvements. Right? What we don't want to do is mess up the entire site as we're building the building. So we want to make sure that when we talk to the CM and others, we make sure that we indicate the parts of the site that we want disturbed and the parts of the site that we do not want to disturb. Because once they're disturbed, they have to be restored, and that costs money. So we want to make sure we do that. One thing that we really haven't talked about, and there's going to be lots of discussion, and Jack and others will also be talking about this, is one way to sort of hedge against inflation and escalation is perhaps by doing some early procurement. That is a strategy we've used elsewhere. There might be some packages that get issued early and get started earlier. Now there's some procedures and some things that we have to do with the state to get permission to do that. But that is a strategy that we may want to consider. And there also may be some things that we may want to purchase early, like if we can figure out what our emergency generator is, we may want to do a package early like that. But that's something that we can talk about as we get further into the discussion. We also want to work on a demolition and abatement strategy, right? What we don't want to do is pour unnecessary money in taking the building down and disposing of it. We want to make sure that that strategy is well worked out, and we find the most cost-effective way to do that and get that building off the site so we can restore the property. Mike Segan mentioned bid alternate options, right? There will be a time and a place where we start listing a bid alternate or several bid alternates that can help close the gap. Now, one of the things we have to remember is the market that I'm reporting on is the current market, right? We are not going to bid until next summer, right? So it could be a very, very different marketplace then. But what we don't want to do is make decisions now that can't be undone later if the market changes. So we want to build in some flexibility and some options to allow the committee and the town to buy parts of the site or parts of this project that right now may not be apparently within the budget, but later may be, depending on how the bids come in. So there's going to be some bid alternates that we're going to be talking about, and we're going to be pointing those out, and that's a way of sort of addressing, some escalation issues and some cost concerns. And then, of course, there's the material selection, as far as how the materials, finishes, things like that will affect the overall budget of the project. All right? So all is not lost. And what we wanted to do is sort of bring your attention to things that we think about and things that we'll be talking to you about in great detail over the next, 4 to 6 months as the project evolves, and when we're asking you guys to make decisions, you're informed of what's happening. And as the market evolves and changes, we're going to provide an update to what's going on and give you heads up if something starts going in the wrong direction, or conversely, if we're starting to see some easing of pricing, like concrete and steel and some of those basic trades, that will overall help our project meet its financial objectives. All right? Any questions? And by the way, you're going to get this slideshow. Okay? So now we're going to talk about site location options. These are some very interesting conversations, and I'm going to ask the design team to take over.
Sure.
You want to start, Matt?
Yeah. Does that make sense? There you go. If you remember, last time we talked about factors that impacted the design and the surrounding context, and this just brings that slide up again. We'll be talking about some of the issues here tonight with the various options. Could you go to the next slide, Joe? And we also talked about the existing program on the site and making sure we incorporate that into the new design, how the existing site functions, how to keep the school operational during the construction of the new building itself. And next one, please. And then we talked about the overall developable area in the existing fields within the school site itself, and again, maintaining utilities, access, buses, parent drop, and the basic functioning of the project as the new building is constructed. And we even talked about some phasing and access from the Park Road in terms of construction access. We also talked about, and I'll just mention this here, the adjacent land between the school site and the Park Road, and the possibilities of utilizing some of that land, some or a portion of it, and you'll see that happening in some of the options we go over tonight. And I think there's, it's later on the agenda, but the reading is there is no formal property line, but I think there is I don't know, a use line that maybe Matt, you can.
Yeah, some kind of like a lease line or some kind of
A lease line that the council would have to approve for any encroachment into that. So keep that in mind as you look at various options as well. So what we're going to do is look at various options for building locations and then how that affects the related site work. Matt was at the meeting yesterday afternoon, and we've got some, it was a productive meeting, got some very interesting input from staff. we've moved quickly to actually create some additional options to look at based on that input that we got. So you'll see that tonight as well. Next one. The first concept we have is, it should look familiar to you. It's basically locating the building pretty close to the pre-referendum plan that was done early on. And it's basically in the area of the existing soccer field. The access would be maintained in terms of the parent coming and queuing and the parking. Different though is where the existing building is, would be a new soccer field, parking in a loop around that. Baseball field remains in its existing location. The softball field would have to be slightly modified. It could impact the Park Road and a slight modification there. The softball field is not oriented properly. This would put it into the proper orientation anyway. So this is a concept, and you can see we've started to list in all these schemes some of the pros and cons. Some of the obvious pros here is that we're able to get certainly the amount of parking, both for the BOE and the school itself, nicely segregated bus and parent drops. Baseball is in its same location, so we hopefully will avoid investment into rebuilding of that field. We corrected the softball orientation. The fields are generally relative to each other, and the school building is quite a ways away from the residential or the adjacent neighborhood. Some of the negatives are the parent drop remains the same problem, where there's a significant amount of backup, and they have to set cones out, and so that really boxes us in here. And you'll see a number of options to that as well. Limited space for the softball, so it most likely involve just a little bit of the Park Road being realigned. Building and outdoor spaces most likely will want to trickle into the adjacent wooded area immediately to the west, especially some of the outdoor learning facilities. A great opportunity to take advantage of that land as well as part of the school program. And another negative thing is that students need to cross basically parking in the entry lane to get to the soccer field. So that's just a quick overview of this. Go to the next one, Joe. I'll move through some of these.
Sorry, just quickly.
Sure.
Those yellow lines indicate like the current like lease line.
Yeah.
Those yellow dotted lines, and
the
then
the yellow lines here. First of all, that's the outline of the park.
Okay.
This yellow line actually came from a 1950 map that defined the school property. They weren't formal property lines, but we took that from that, and there's just different information. There's some that say that you follow the fence line, and that's sort of the lease line.
Okay.
But I think there's going to be some flexibility here in how we work.
So the two on the left-hand side, the two vertical lines kind of indicate like where we think approximately the school lease line is, and then the next line over brings us to the park.
Yes.
It's like, so the town's kind of park line.
The only
Okay.
variation is the fence line, I believe, does this now, and whether the lease line follows the fence line or comes straight up.
Okay.
It almost, I'm not sure I think the line will be in discussion at some point.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
This looks at a different building configuration, more to some of the options that Mike has been looking at. And it does encroach more into this. It's about 2.5 to 3 acres of land here between the school edge and fencing in the Park Road. The school here does pull back, so it does allow us to get a vehicular loop that's a little bit longer, more parent queuing, more parking down here adjacent to the school. All the other things remain. This is sort of what we call diagram 1A. It's a variation of 1. The same kind of pros and cons work with this one. This does help with the parent queuing here, but it still doesn't come close to the amount that we need unless we start moving in and out of this parking lot and get kind of a convoluted situation there. Next, John. Want to pause here and talk about an issue that came up in our meeting with staff, and that was the sight lines. If you look at the photograph here, as you come out on Gear Street, the sight lines to the east towards that crest, they're not good, and I spent quite a bit of time today talking with the traffic engineer who's going to look at this issue in much more depth. Staff strongly wanted us to look at this entrance and consider a different entrance here. They're concerned about the safety, et cetera. So we're going to have the traffic engineer look at this, and there are things, traffic calming things that can be done potentially. You know, if there's a stop sign here and you know, flashing lights in terms of crossing, especially when school's out, but also this whole parcel is used very heavily by the community too. So the issue doesn't just go away with the beginning and end of school. What they recommended is using the Park Road as the entrance to the school. And you're going to see some concepts that do that as well, that modify what we have. And you can see here, this is what you're looking at from the park entrance, and you're looking down basically the same orientation here, but you have the entire baseball field length to add to that sightline length. So it's much better, very more than enough in the standard here. The view to the west, to the other side, is good from both driveways. So it's really this east view. So what we did is, from the meeting yesterday afternoon, we worked hard to look at some options. So we're going to go through those in each of the schemes as well, some variations for the building committee's input and discussion. Next. This one takes the initial diagram 1 and says, okay, what if this might be kept as an emergency entrance or a secondary entrance, but what if we came down and in from the Park Road, you know, beyond I think that's a Boy Scout building there, and it's a concession building, but came into the site this way and around. This would necessitate probably improvements along this road, widening, possibly a walk along here as well. There's probably just barely enough room. We're waiting for the survey to see what that area has to offer. The one positive thing on this is it addresses certainly the sightline issues to the east, where the existing Gear Street exit is. But it also increases the queuing, the parent queuing. So, you know, this is something that we've put into the hopper now and to consider. It does expand the scope of work. You can see where the building here does project, just to make everything work here, projects quite a bit into the wooded area, but there's still quite a bit of wood still around the building itself. Next, Joe.
Actually, if you could stand up for 1 second. Sure. Should mention, can I see the pointer? Yeah. So, for Joe's, to kind of drive home Joe's point about, you know, cost and trying to minimize disruption on the site and maintain pieces, we really like this option because what it does, it really preserves majority of the northern portion of the site. The softball field that Mike said we'd like to reorient, and most likely this would be a great staging area for contractors. You know, they can utilize the Park Road and get to the site without having to disrupt any of the school traffic and cross any school activities. Use this as a staging area, and then construct the school, really leaving the baseball field untouched, which would really help in the final solution. Michael run through a couple other options, that looks at putting the building up there, but this really is a pretty efficient solution.
And the bus route would remain the same, so the students
Yeah,
would
the
still
buses,
cross over?
the buses would continue to come in here's the bus loop around the soccer field and then parking on either side as well. Staff was fine with the buses continuing in from the neighborhood here because they really come right up from Gear and into the site fairly quickly and don't wind through the neighborhood itself.
Yeah, and we're currently, we're in the very early stages right now of, starting to lay this building out, and we'll share it with you in the coming weeks. So that's why we kind of have a box up there of an approximate size. But we do believe we can probably have a better solution for the bus loop. But the idea, buses will still come off manned, some sort of bus loop, on this side, parent loop over here, and they both bring you to the front door at a single position over here. We are showing service off here. I think this is kind of a leftover from some of the early schemes. Now that we know that kind of Walters Park Road is in play for some school use. I mean, I don't think we want to bring school buses down that road, but parents, up for a portion of it and then into the site, then out. We also think that services, trash and food deliveries, limited times, a day or during a week, can utilize this road and then kind of sneak into the back of the school, getting some of those additional vehicles out away from where students are crossing over, and then going to being dropped off and picked up throughout the day and accessing the fields. We also really kind of love this connection of these trees and this part of the site into the school. And Mike and I, we're going to play around with making that an strong outdoor connection. So.
I might even talk while this is up here. One options we're playing with now that we're looking at this kind of entry is the bus loop would come in and end up with a circular thing here where the service area is and not come all the way through, and this parking area would extend up to here. So you'd have the parking contiguous up in this manner. The bus loop does not have to be as long as this is, so it's taking up a lot of room. And the bus could literally come back out. And also, a pro of that is all this parking that would come in off of here, just more traffic through the neighborhood. If it comes in this way, we're keeping even more traffic out of the neighborhood. So we're going to explore that in terms of the development of this concept as well.
And where would you expect central office to be in this layout?
Yep, so it is hard to see, but there's an arrow here. This is still the footprint that we shared at the interview, which like we mentioned last time, this is a really good starting point, and this is what we're building off of right now. So currently the school entrance, the arrow right here, you got the main corridor that runs up, kind of north and south on the site. On the right-hand side would be your large assembly spaces, and then the Board of Ed would have its own identity off to the side on the east. And we'll explore a number of locations, how that plugs into the school.
And one of the things of moving the bus loop up north of the soccer field
Can
would
you
give
just-
more connection. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Would give more of a connection of the building to the soccer field without being interrupted with parking or a bus loop.
Yes.
So that's something that we're looking
So you
at.
could almost move the soccer field closer to the building, right? Or no? Or you're saying that'd be all parking?
Well, we don't really need to because we just need a two-way access here for the buses to come in and then come back out if that's what's done. It's just a question of, can we get at least some connection where the bus loop ends and this parking ends where the students can come out to the soccer field without crossing an aisle or through parking, and I think we can make that work.
And what that solution does do is actually it separates and creates kind of two entrance points, in the morning and in the afternoon when they leave. So that's an operational discussion that we'll have to have with Dr. Macri and the educators. Make sure that that's something we often do on schools. It gets controlled. Once the kids are in school, doors are locked down. Any visitors, anyone that's late comes to the front door, right? So that's something we'll explore as well.
Another thing I noticed on that is it seems to me you might even be able to move the soccer field farther south to give more room for that bus loop to the north.
Yes.
You could go up into where the existing
Correct.
bus loop is now.
Correct.
And if you extend that parking all the way around the corner of the building, you just want to make sure you have site visibility to the administrative offices and central office so they know what's coming at them.
Yeah, that's a big concern from Dr. Macri's standpoint. She wants more visibility from the front door.
Right.
Mike, what is that size of that soccer field, just for everybody, scale-wise?
I think it's a step up from U12, so it's sort of the absolute minimum for even a high school level. So it's decent size. It's like 180 by, I think, 300. So it's a good size to have for multiple uses in terms of soccer itself. So we do want to confirm, we talked about this yesterday afternoon, the requirements for the size of the baseball field. And typically when you go to a 90-foot, baseline, you really want to have the 300-foot outfield, and that's what the existing baseball field is there now. So we need to check and see how it's programmed into the overall recreation and school program. Might be good to go through the other concept, and we can always come back to these too when you see the other options. And any other questions on this one right now? So we see a lot of potential in this, and we already know where we'd like to start tweaking things and modifying things. And what'll help us is we don't like doing too much modification until we get the survey, and that's going to be done fairly close. When you're looking at, adjacencies and 10 feet to the property line or whatever you're doing, it's nice to have a good solid survey. This is diagram 2, and if you remember that kind of buildable area, this puts it up at the very top northeastern corner of that buildable area. And the positive thing is now you're moving the building, let me just get this here, you're moving the building away from the entrance here. So as you come up, we really get a lot of queuing, parent queuing, if we do a double lane coming up. And we basically can meet the queuing requirement of 100 cars with this concept. And this also brings the buses in terms of the same loop from the neighborhood, and rebuilds the baseball field down here, soccer field in the same location. We just show the softball that the orientation it is now, if it was reconfigured the right way, would impact up here and probably want to come into the wooded area a little bit more. There's a lot of issues with this scheme, but I think it was helpful to look at it. One is the building is right up against the adjacent neighborhood, so that would be a new impact for the neighbors in this part of the adjacent to the site. In addition, there's issues with the baseball field and the impact on the existing fields here. It's very tight in terms of this section across here. And the parking is really spread out from the distance from here all the way up to the school, and you didn't get that in the previous concept. So, there's some pluses to this, but some real negatives as well. Here's looking at modifying the concept to come in from the Park Road, and you can come in here with a loop system and come back out. And this, much of the woods would remain intact here. And so this certainly would work. It also, we probably could finesse the design of this area so that we were able to get the full queue and queuing stacking for the parent drop. Still have the same issue here with the baseball field and the same issue here with the proximity to the neighborhood. Next, Joe.
What's the solar orientation of the softball field? Like, what is the good solar orientation?
There's my experience, two acceptable orientations, and different athletic directors have different preferences on those. East-northeast, which is basically the way the baseball field is oriented now.
Yeah.
That's the ideal orientation. I worked with a couple athletic directors around the state that liked it flipped over just 180 degrees the opposite, and they really felt that was even better. So usually one of those two orientations is what we'll try to meet.
Okay.
Next, Joe. This is also a viable option. It's kind of a little bit closer to the variation of one, I think 1B or 1A. But it's moving the building in that northwest corner, probably encroaching a little bit into the wooded area. What this does is you do have to rebuild all the fields, but it does bring in the parking and bus circulation together so that there's easy access from the school to the fields without having to cross any parking or access aisles. This would also, if it's designed properly, almost gets the amount of queuing that you need because of the length of this coming up, and shifts a little more of the parking over here and away from coming in from the neighborhood. This one also, I think, you can see this is moved over a bit too, so there's a little more breathing room here with the Little League field. And I'm sure when the scheme gets worked out, we would be looking to come into here a bit, and certainly to make the building work, unless Mike created some creative solutions here, some realignment of the Park Road. One of the constraints we have up here is the picnic area, which is here, so we'd have to avoid having any impact on that. But it looks pretty much like as you come down through here, there's a lot of flexibility till you get down to where the Boy Scout building is. Next, Joe.
I
Have,
have questions.
Sure.
The softball interfering with the soccer field's not going to fly in this town. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, we actually discussed that yesterday afternoon. We-
Yeah.
And, and we discussed that yesterday afternoon, and it's very typical for a rectangular field to overlap either baseball or softball. And you always think of the gender equity thing. Why is it overlapping a softball field? So you would have to function in a way that obviously in the softball season, spring, this would rule and soccer would not. But after the meeting, this was brought up actually by the police chief in terms of the issues here. After the meeting, I went out to the site, and the existing baseball field and its outfield was filled with an overlap of a rectangular field, which is really typical. So probably that's the same thing's going to happen here, and you're going to get the overlap in both fields.
Why couldn't we move the bus loop up through the Watchers Park entrance and then move the whole soccer field down? Why does the bus loop have to be there?
This scheme has them coming in the way they do now,
Right.
which was supposedly the preferred route in. And you'll see some other variations
Okay.
that address this. This is the way to address on this scheme access in from the Park Road, and this actually create a nice entrance through the forested area, almost like a boulevard kind of entrance. We get our stacking here if we double stack with the parking in the middle. So our main parking lot would be here feeding into the school, and then the buses would come on this side with less parking in here. Baseball field in this scheme would be moved down almost to the property line, maybe a little bit of parking in here to feed into the ball fields. This has the same overlap issue, and I think one of the negative things to this is a little bit of the distance that the bus drop is from the school. And if this could be shortened, we can move the bus loop a little bit over closer. So we'll look at that if we pursue this scheme. But that's maybe one of the flaws here is that, as well as the having to overlap the two fields.
The way you have it right now, would the students come off on like some kind of paved surface? that's separating the parking lot from the soccer fields or whatever? Like, is there, there's gotta be some kind of protected path.
Oh, yes, absolutely, yeah. Yeah. And when we get into the actual developing, the actual design, schematic design, we'll be showing those kinds of elements into the design. And we go from a diagram to actually a schematic design. On all these schemes that come off of the Park Road, you know, you're adding site costs and you're expanding the project area, but you are addressing the access issue that's here, and I think doing it probably in a minimal way, although the Park Road will have to be improved as well. And then, based on further discussion at the meeting yesterday, some of the people that were inputting wanted us to look at the entire main entrance coming off the Park Road with all the parking here, so it would all be situated on this side, basically taking advantage of the full 2.5, 3 acres that are between the existing school site and the Park Road. So this utilizes all of that. So you'd come in with your main entrance, and drop-off would actually work like this. It would start here, come around, loop around, and then drop on this side. The bus loop would come in the same general area, but would come, extend in, and come over to that point. You still have the issue with the overlap. We may be able to address that a little bit better by moving this bus loop down a little bit lower down here and getting a little more separation, maybe just enough to make the two fields work independently. You know, one of the pros of this is that all the parking now is fairly close to the building and all centralized. The negative thing, and I'll let Mike talk a little bit, well, one of the things, you're impacting the entire wooded area. So basically you're clearing that 2.5, 3 acres. All the other schemes preserved different amounts of those woods, which makes sense if we can. And this has a pretty big impact on the building, especially when we've done this numerous times, but you have two entrances to the building, one from the bus loop and one from the parent drop. And, you know, where's that main entrance and how that's defined. So it puts a lot more challenge on the architects in terms of the development of the building and create some other issues. Mike, you may want to.
Yeah, we see, excuse me, we've always seen the forest, the part of the Watchers Park as, you know, as an asset. It's kind of a magical part of the site, and the initial schemes that we're looking at, we're trying to, you know, nestle up the academic neighborhoods, those little fingers, you know, kind of nestle them into those woods and create some outdoor learning opportunities, and really that's really the quiet side of the site, you know, as opposed to the large boxes, your gym, auditorium, your CAF, and then your outdoor, you know, fields and parking. So this, you know, this kind of turns it around. The box that we're showing right here, you know, currently doesn't fit. It's encroaching on the existing building. That won't fly, so we're kind of fighting against each other. The scheme also flips the front door. I think that's probably the most concerning, is from a security and where the front door of the school is going to be. And would no longer face gear. It would face north on the top of the site. So I know, you know, security and arrival sequence, you know, was almost, you know, kind of killing this solution. But we wanted to explore this option because it was requested. So you can blame Mike for that. So.
There's an opinion back there.
Yeah, exactly. That's how we feel.
So I think it was at least a worthy thing of looking at. It was brought up again yesterday afternoon in the meeting, so we worked quickly to see what that would look like on the site so the committee could see that as well.
I just see huge expense with something like this, especially with all that additional site work that we had not planned for.
Exactly, and I think that's, if you look at the cons down here, that certainly is a big element in addition to clearing the wooded area. Yes. So it would be significantly more expensive, the site development costs.
the solar orientation that you had figured out in your design doesn't work with this layout either.
Well, Mike and his team kind of took the plan and I think mirrored it 2 different directions.
Yeah.
So I think we could. I think we could be creative enough. We do still have the academic wings kind of coming off running east and west. But to your point, yes, it kind of throws a wrench into the whole equation where I think orientation and getting the academic building sited correctly becomes more of a challenge with this.
And then this one would have basically two main entrances, one for parents and another for just the buses, but that's still fairly common.
Yep.
One thing if we wanted to pursue this, which I don't think we will, I don't like the fields overlapping either. But the bus loop, maybe it could go further north like he had proposed in 1C, and then putting the softball field over next to the baseball fields. You know, looping back on itself and then going back down towards Man Memorial.
And,
That's
and I
good suggestion, yeah.
I
if we
wouldn't rule
pursue-
out Gear Street entrance at all. I mean, if we can get a stop sign, put a 3-way stop there, I mean, I think that would solve the problem, right? And most parents are used to using Gear Street. I think when you start talking about, oh, now I gotta drive all the way over across Watchers Road, like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't just take that off the table.
Maybe, Joe, that really concludes the options that we wanted to talk about. I don't know if it's worth going back to like 1B just to put that up.
Which option do you feel would you recommend? Let's
Well-
start there. Which one do you like the best?
This seems to be working out the best. By actually coming off the Park Road, it does give us that extra stacking, but we're also talking about modifying this so the bus loop does that, right, and comes back out, and this parking area moves up into here, so it gets all the parking much more centralized. Yeah, and then you can get, to the field here without, crossing a drive because it doesn't come through, and also access out to the baseball field. So it kind of combines a lot of the issues and addresses the access issue as well. So
Did you show this option at the zoning meeting?
No, we didn't have,
No,
not
this
this
exactly.
particular.
But do you think, Matt, that
We
they
showed
would be
this one.
open to this encroachment if we had to?
The
Of town
encroachment.
property?
Yeah, those were, it was encouraged, frankly, to, pursue it because of the tightness of the space we're trying to work within. And it gives us more options.
We'd
So,
be really close to that building in the lower left too, like really, really close to that building.
yeah, I mean, we're not measuring down to the, like, yeah.
We just gotta
We
be
have to find a
careful.
way to do it, right?
yeah,
There could
we
be a-
feel
yeah.
we could make this work, and
Oh,
yeah,
I see
the
the
meeting
lines.
yesterday, they were
I see the
actually
lines.
encouraging us
Yeah.
to take maximum advantage of that
Right.
space.
Oh, okay, good.
That was the big takeaway yesterday, is
Good.
that we're allowed to nibble away at the forest to help the school design.
Oh,
and-
perfect.
And how that edge is actually made, and, it may not be complete clear cutting, it may be a selective thinning out, and maybe we can use some of that material as part of the landscape. We just don't know yet, but
Yeah.
the takeaway is that they're comfortable with us taking a little bit of that space for the school use.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and we've even said for construction access, there's gonna have to be some type of path, trail blaze to get in there anyhow. So maybe, we talk about being efficient here. Can we then say, well, we're future gonna pave that and make that an entryway
Yep.
anyways off of Watchers Road?
Yeah, I mean, we love the idea of using that Park Road for service, because you can imagine milk trucks, delivery trucks, those kinds of everyday occurrences can come outside the normal school and come into the back of the school without disturbing everyone
As
that's
long as we don't
happening.
have to do too much work to Watchers Park Road, because I
Well,
don't want to
Right, I don't wanna
repave that whole road
No, I
on
don't wanna.
our
I don't-
budget.
Right, I agree, Roseanne.
Yeah.
I don't wanna make that a major thoroughway. I wanna
Yeah.
make it as part of almost like campus service road.
Yep.
In fact, if we could keep it as it is and mark it accordingly, I think that would be the ideal thing. It is actually quite a beautiful drive if you go through there.
Oh, yeah.
Through there right now, and the pavement is in excellent condition. So it's not like it's a road that's rutted or that it's
I
poorly
think they just
paved.
paved it recently,
It-
right?
it
Probably,
is-
yeah.
It is actually in fantastic condition right now, and I'd love to be able to use it as it is. create a little service in the back, and then have the front of the building, for the Board of Ed offices and the school, the access and entry from one side that can be observable and supervised.
Yeah. So I'd suggest, the conversation is good. I would just suggest that this would be good if there was the smaller design team that could work, kind of noodle on this back and forth a little bit, and then maybe come back with some finalist designs that don't put all our eggs in one basket in case something with Watch Rush Park does not pan out for whatever reason, width or deed restrictions or need for sidewalk or lights or whoever knows. So
Well, do you need
maybe
us?
have one or the.
Do you need us to decide on an option this evening? How's
It would
that?
be helpful to get some direction.
I would say this is a good base to start with.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your opinion. If this is the direction, we'd love
Well, I
to
think
hear
it's either
that.
this one or 1B, right? So 1B was the alternative off of there.
Yeah.
Yep.
You like
Either
that?
one.
Yeah, I would think this is our one. If we could use Watchers Park, or 1A is the one if keeping the gear
Yeah,
entrance.
I'm sort of the same opinion. We're gonna hear from our traffic consultant regarding, that intersection. If there's some improvements, whether it's signage, flashing lights, or something else, there's gotta be a way to control the speed of the cars
And I'd
going
be
through that.
concerned about the costs also by adding this. It looks short in here, but that looks like a long road going off from Watchers Park. So
It is.
that's
But again, keep in mind they're gonna have to make some type of entryway, right, for construction somewhere.
And we need the queuing space for the parent drop-off.
But you're talking about a dirt road versus a fully paved, lined road, right? Like, the cost differential is significant.
They would have to add a fully paved line regardless, though.
Yeah.
Like, would you be able to keep the existing, like, parking lot and entrance?
No, I'm
that you're
talking about,
saying?
so that road that comes off Watchers Park Road right now, right? If that was supposed to be just a service, while the school's being built, if we're saying we need something for the trucks to come in,
Yep.
they just need a dirt road for that. They don't need a
Yeah,
full
dirt or
think
gravel road.
there-
Right,
there's-
gravel road.
Yeah, there's two issues. One is obviously the cost that may or may not add, but it's also what improvements are we gonna have to make
Right.
from that
You're
point
gonna have to
on?
widen that road.
Are we
You're
gonna
gonna
have
put a
to
sidewalk
widen
on
it?
that
Are
road.
we gonna have to add a sidewalk along the road?
Well, that's what I'm at. Right, I don't. I mean, that's what you're saying. If it's billed more as
So-
this is a service entrance and a limited use entrance for vehicle drop off only, then.
Right.
So maybe look at both
Yeah.
options and come back and let us know
Yeah.
the cost differential between the two. I mean, just looking at this, it's obvious that 1B would probably have more cost because of that.
And I don't think it'll happen, but if the traffic engineer comes back and says, we just can't make that entrance work, then it might force us into this. But
Yeah.
again, we don't know what input. I had again, good discussion with him, but he's got to do his study.
Okay.
And these options, we're thinking the laydown areas where softball is?
I got a feeling that's where it's going to be, especially if we want
Then we
to
preserve
totally
the baseball,
separate
too,
the construction folks from the school activity. That makes total sense to me. Sort of put it behind the construction line. They'll build a construction fence, and the tradespeople will come in and out of the site. They won't disturb the rest of the
Yeah.
property.
The key is staying away from the baseball field so
Yeah.
we don't have to go in and redo that in this scheme.
Yeah, the soccer field is kind of shaky anyways, so I don't think it would be that big of a deal to fix it up after they're done with the lay down and trailers and
So
that
then
kind of thing.
that may have more of the construction entrance coming off of that
Right,
down
right.
there.
Yeah, the idea.
Not
So you wouldn't even need
the
that
other
extra
one.
road. yeah.
Right, the idea is
Okay,
use the
yeah.
park road for service while you're building the building, and then service after your building
Right.
is done.
Yeah.
Was there any discussion about opening Grove Road?
Yes, and that was pretty definitively closed
Okay.
down.
Oh, God, no. That's a horrible, no.
Although, I would have thought that there could have been something as in terms of, a gate where it was only controlled open for bus traffic out for some very limited purposes, but it was just said no. Like
And why is it closed?
I don't know. I guess
It was,
either
it was
the
to
town or
minimize the
zoning,
traffic. They don't
yeah.
want people going
Yeah,
in from there to
the
get into
neighborhood
Watchers
I
Park.
think initially that was the
Yeah.
entrance, but they just don't want the traffic coming through the neighborhood here.
Yeah.
To get in and out to the
Yeah,
recreation
I think
areas and
Matt
stuff,
barely
yeah.
got the sentence halfway
Yeah.
out.
Well, there's no sidewalks on that road, and with the amount of traffic, it's just caused an unsafe situation.
Yeah. It does keep, traffic from flying through, and and which often happens too. So,
Yep.
yeah, and keep in mind there's two things: there's construction access and then service
Right.
access. So that's something we'll be looking at. And we'll work with Mike.
But
and-
even
and
with
Joe.
service access, we wouldn't have to do anything to Watchers Park Road. We don't have to widen it for that.
We don't think so.
Yeah.
You know, it's
But you're saying
fairly nice.
construction access, during the construction period, and then thereafter it can be repurposed for
Service.
service
Yes.
access. Yeah.
You know, the
Okay.
milk truck, the paper.
So you're saying
truck,
that
garbage.
would be say follow a north-south along the to the left of the softball field potentially.
Yes.
Possibly, yeah.
Possibly,
We'll look at the shortest run, least impact. Yeah.
Okay.
Could you speak to really quickly the security aspect of this? So if there's a portion of the school that is surrounded by trees, should there be an intruder, how do you secure that part of the school where there really aren't any sight lines? Is it cameras? Is it fences? Like, how do you manage that?
Yes.
First of all, the trees won't come right up to the building. There'll be some space. And it's really not the trees, because there's so many mature trees. It's the understory. And we'll probably clean that up in terms of, and then create a perimeter fence between that and the Park Road. So there's a lot of things we can do from a security point of view, and cameras, et cetera, will provide an eye in that part of the site.
And the state has a lot of guidelines for security, things that you could do with the building, height of window sills, landscaping around the building, cameras, things like that. That get signage that get built into the project automatically.
So maybe 1A and 1B being kind of the
Right.
top candidates right now.
Yep.
Can we flip back to 1A? Okay.
Yeah, the big difference is simply whether you come off of the Park Road, or do you continue to come off. The only benefit to that, in addition to the sightline issue, is the additional queuing that you get as you
So
come in.
here we wouldn't get the queuing, but we potentially have a cost savings without having to add a road and potentially
Yes.
add sidewalks to the Park Road.
And we think by the change we talked about of cutting off the bus loop here and extending this out, we can add to the queuing as well. Whether we still, there's still a question whether we'll meet that minimum amount. So we'll do our best to look at that.
There's also a sidewalk down at the bottom part of that parent loop that I think we've been told not to touch. Do we know if we can move it or not? That probably didn't come up in the discussion.
Right.
Yeah,
the
because
sidewalk
here
by the
you would want a
parent?
sidewalk on the other side of where it
Yeah.
is, right? Like the sidewalk.
The sidewalk's like in a really bad place right now.
Yeah.
I don't know either. No one uses it.
Whereabouts along Pier Street?
Where that blue, with the bottom of the blue line is on the parent loop. Yeah, where that blue line is
It
the
comes
sidewalk.
into the school. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no one
Oh.
really utilizes the bottom part, just the
No, 'cause I
sidewalk.
Because there's not a lot of
It's not
people
continuous.
coming
It's not
into the
continuous
school.
to the actual
It just
school.
ends. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
There-
Tell you what,
When I've been out there have been a lot of walkers along the Park Road
Yeah.
too, so we should keep that in mind. It's pretty heavily used. Yeah.
it would. I was just thinking about now. It would really be nice if you had the entrance like you have the vehicle entrance, but if you had a one-way exit
Yeah, to
right there, just go right
And I
across.
think
I know the Cub Scout building's there, and I'm a Cub Scout leader,
But
so
if
I'm not
it's-
suggesting that. But there is, I don't know. You have to measure the space if you can even just fit a one-way road, just to funnel out, because then you could exit
we
out
actually
of Watchers Park
started
Road.
that. If you go
Yeah,
to
the
the
same
next scheme, Joe. No.
We
Yeah, we
cut that.
actually were looking at this as a one-way exit out, and we said, well, if you're going to do that, why not just bring everybody in here, et cetera?
if you
and
had a
avoid-
one-way exit out, though, you wouldn't need to widen Watchers Park Road, right?
I'm pretty sure you're gonna need to do that.
You still need to do that?
You have
Okay.
to, and you have to think through like where the kids walking, right? Like what entrance are the kids walking and biking into,
Yeah. I
and
suspect-
where are vehicles crossing?
I was just saying because no one's concerned about that. The entrance is dangerous. It's more the exit, right? It's coming out
True.
of that vehicle exit. So I was just saying. If
That's
you
a
can
good point.
shuttle
if-
out, but if you could abut the baseball field, because I think that's a batting cage and maybe like a storage shed, but
But if
you
we
have
can
to relocate
move,
that.
if we can move the bus loop so we don't come all the way down, then that opens up a lot more area for, a lot more perimeter for the
It does.
parent loop.
And
Yeah.
the sightline issue is mostly coming out, but you got.
That's what I was saying,
You
yeah,
have to
it's just
realize
coming
too also, when you're along the road and taking a left-hand turn in, you also, cars come kind of over that crest pretty quickly too. So
Yeah.
it does come into play even
If
Oh,
we
yeah,
had,
entrance,
if we
but
had a
not as
three-way
much.
stop sign, right, then that should forces everyone to stop.
Yes. I've often
Like the high
had,
school. The high school has the same exact thing, same
Yeah.
situation. They have a three-way stop.
I've often found though that where we think a stop sign makes sense, that from a traffic point of view, it's not allowed by the whatever. And I think one of the arguments is that, coming over that crest,
You have a
come
short
quickly
distance
to
to stop if
a
there's
stop
people
sign, you
there.
might not even see it. It might create more problems, but if we have the flashing lights, stop ahead, et cetera. So these are all the kinds of things we're gonna go through with the traffic engineer
Yep.
and get his input.
And also crosswalks. There's no crosswalk there for kids to walk over, which is another big problem. I don't think there's no crosswalk there. I don't think.
And-
If you go back to that road photo, I don't think there was a crosswalk there. There isn't, right? Can you go back to the photo
The
of the
sidewalk's on the
side?
other-
Oh,
There's one, but not across to Woodside. There's no.
no.
Right.
It's at the
There's a
corner.
crosswalk, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not at the entrance of the middle school.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah,
kids just walk right across because they don't
Yeah,
want to walk all the way
they
down.
typically don't like doing that mid-block, which this would be mid-block, but if there were stop signs there, that's a
Right.
perfect spot for
Yeah.
a crosswalk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
It's a tricky intersection, so I think a traffic study, it will behoove us.
All right, good. So I think, do we need to vote on these options, option A and B, or can we just,
No, I don't think so.
there's consensus. Okay, we're good. Options A and B.
Yeah, I think we have a sense of the body.
Okay,
Okay.
good. All right. All right. Is there anything else that you want to show, or?
Couple quick slides.
Sure.
Joe, talk about schedule.
Yep. So schedule, so we're still in programming verification. We'll be meeting with the educators tomorrow morning to go over more of specific programs within the building. It's going to be a nice long marathon meeting, bright and early, 8 a.m.
Nice.
Then we're going to be moving quickly, starting in November, into the actual schematic design and starting to lay out the building fully and the site and getting that all to mesh together and wrapping that up at the end of the year.
Yeah, we already got kind of a head start with the program that we have now. So we're trying to squeeze it. It's always, the building always starts pretty fat. The high grossing number, and then you start moving the boxes closer and closer. Look at adjacencies where we're going to fit it on the site. So we're kind of getting a jump start. So I think we'll hit the ground running once we hit schematics in a couple weeks.
Can I jump in here? So you're meeting with the teachers tomorrow. What types of questions are you asking them? What type of information are you getting from them?
Just, they're gonna tell them whatever they're gonna have the best day tomorrow, because they're gonna hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
Well, that's great. I mean, because we'll probably talk about it later, but that's definitely been feedback as we've gone to other schools.
Yeah.
And one reason I ask what types of questions are you asking is, they probably have some great ideas, but there may be also some things that they haven't even conceptualized
Right.
yet.
Yeah.
How do we kind of get those creative juices flowing?
Yeah, we'll be showing a number of different options that we've done on other buildings. Like we're gonna be meeting with the nurse and showing how different nursing options and layouts, and get feedback on how they actually work in this district.
Right.
So,
With that option 1B, oh, I'm sorry, I have a question.
oh, I think where's that coming
Where's
from?
the voice? Oh, there you are. I'm hearing the back there. I'm like, oh, really?
No, with that option 1B, with that
Yeah.
current stamp, does that account for all the 83,313 square feet? Or does that go up to a second floor in portions of that?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good question. So right now we're exploring a two-story option, a very limited two-story option.
Not
where-
the whole-
Not
not
no,
the
not
whole
not
thing.
not similar to Tectons.
Okay.
You know, one of the wings it's hard to see,
Yeah.
but we basically what we showed last time were two academic wings that run east and west. Only one of those would be a two-story
So it
portion,
would
and
be-
that's it. I know we do. I know we're asked to look at a single-story option, but I think we can. You're shaking head over there. I think we understand the implications of a single-story. Once you start spreading that
Yeah.
footprint out, you're
inefficient,
losing a
too.
field.
You're running out of
losing,
room.
yeah.
It's
Okay.
inefficient. And with the option to expand the second floor, the second wing.
Exactly. We can add on.
Extend, yeah.
Yeah, extend to that. Exactly.
Okay. All right, so rolling
Okay,
back to
let's
the
go back.
schedule.
And you said this is the presentation, you'll send it out after the fact. Okay, thanks.
So this is not a new diagram, so this is just showing that, we're progressing the job and we're still totally on schedule.
Yeah.
All right. So let's skip through that. And next steps, Joe?
So next steps, we mentioned we're going to be meeting with the educators tomorrow. We'll report back to you any program adjustments that we're going to be making, if any. Develop the site and building layouts in the SD phase, which we just mentioned, and meet with the design subcommittee. I think Matt had brought that up, especially dialing in the site and those options, and then set up design workshops with the Cromwell community as any that you see fit.
I mean, you can see from the site diagrams alone, the kinds of things that are gonna be of concern to the community. And so, when you're ready, let us know. We'll set some meetings up and we'll start unveiling some of these ideas. Okay?
Yeah, I think we might need a little bit of guidance on at what point is a good time in the design phase to pull them in. Should we have a little bit more meat behind
Yeah, we should.
Probably.
what we've looked at so
Definitely,
far?
we
So,
definitely do.
okay.
Yeah, I think we'd want to get to narrow down to an option and a sketch, right? Or a layout amongst ourselves first before we start.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured, but I'd
Yeah.
love to hear where we should be planning these.
Yeah, because we
And-
do need a little bit of a lead time, right, to advertise and get folks there. So we want to make sure when we're looking at the schedule, if we think, based off of your experience, around this time would be good, just so we can
Yeah.
start getting the word out. But I do understand we want something for us to.
And also, what kind of feedback are we
react to.
getting from the community exactly? Like parking and the kind of stuff that we were getting was more about the parking, the handicap accessibility, the parks, the sports fields is the biggest.
That's gonna be
We're
huge,
big
right?
sports town.
Huge discussion, right?
Yeah. So it's all the exterior stuff that I think the community is going to want to have some buy-in on, and maybe the auditorium, some of the stuff internal. But I think we've settled that part with them.
Okay.
I would think.
Well, it
for
doesn't
now.
have to be just one workshop, too, right? There can be.
Right, but I just want to know what our goal of those workshops are so that we can, and I think once we know the goal of the workshops are, we could probably plan it out time-wise. Could we figure out where the building's going to sit and its orientation without getting that feedback?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if the answer is yes, then we can focus on that first and then we can move on to the,
Should we be doing a workshop, or are we just sharing our
it
progress?
should just be a public forum where we can share progress and they can come back and give us their thoughts.
Ask
feedback.
questions, ask questions.
Ask questions, yep.
Yeah.
What are we calling those things? Public, what are those meetings called? The public meetings? I'll just call it public meeting or a public forum.
Community outreach. All right.
Yeah, so I think getting some input on what that will look like, whether it's called a workshop or whatever it is. What is the right structure to get the community engaged? At what point in the design is the best time to pull them in? And then to Shannon's point, just so that we have time to advertise and, because we are going to start creeping up on the holidays pretty soon, and we want to make sure we're planning around that.
Midpoint.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not something that has to be answered tonight, but.
Yeah, you can send us
Yeah.
an email or something like that, send it to Rosanna with recommendations, and we can work with that. Yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Anything else?
Can I just ask?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I had another question for the when you meet with the educators tomorrow. Kind of want to just re-emphasize Jessica's point about making sure that we get from them, like what's possible, like if we share what's possible and try to pull that out of them versus like what currently doesn't work, right? Like I don't want to spend a lot of time on like this doesn't work today, this doesn't work today, and like really shift to like what we can do, what a modern school can provide. And
They may
to-
not know what the possibilities are, basically.
to really like
right?
push the envelope. And Blaze, if you're still on the phone, I want to hear your thoughts on that too, if you have any.
Maybe had a drop. Maybe he's not. Yeah, he may have dropped. All right. Any other discussion? Anything else? You're good. Okay. Any other discussion from the committee? Okay. All right. Let's move on to arcade. Oh, Blaze. Yep.
I am here. Sorry, I couldn't figure out how to unmute my phone.
Oh.
No worries.
I'm unfortunately not able to go tomorrow. I'm not in school tomorrow, but I will be following up with my colleagues about what's going on.
Okay. Thank you, Blaze.
Thank you. All right. Arcadis, do you have a? Are you showing anything, or are you going to talk? Just going to talk?
No, I'm gonna be handing out
Okay.
Good evening. While Emily takes care of distributing some draft documents for us to discuss, I'd like to put your minds at ease. In the pre-referendum estimate, you have exterior walls, exterior windows, and exterior doors worth almost $6.8 million.
There
So
you go.
You're covered. You are well covered.
So I'm guessing that that factor, they were using something closer to a 1.3 as opposed to a 1.4 then.
Again, don't get focused on the number, the multiplier per se, but rather on the fact that the number that the state wants to see is the number that was presented to the state.
Okay.
So there's no confusion there, and they don't impute some sort of penalty that doesn't exist.
Okay, good.
And you are covered as far as the all the features of the building, like
Thank you for
exterior walls.
checking.
Fantastic.
Well, that's why they measure to the inside, because if you want bamboo and rice paper, you can consider that. You can
And
consider it.
glass all around.
All right, I think the first item to discuss tonight would be the draft budgets for the two projects. And as Rosanna reflected on this afternoon's call with the state, there is enough in the written record to infer that everybody was always talking about two projects, a Board of Ed component and a middle school component. So the hope is that with some discussion at the OSEG level, that they'll be able to concur that there's enough information in the file, even if the motion was worded in a way that wasn't explicit on there being two different pieces of the budget.
And thankfully, Lisa was on the call, so she took really good notes, and she's going to work with Dr. Macri and Ann to what
There
to
you
write.
go.
So we're on it.
That's wonderful. All right, so again, proportionally speaking, the Board of Ed funding is about 4 point some odd % of the overall budget. And we've allocated some funding amongst these multitude of line items that's proportional. As Joe said, we're going to be feeding that space from the main building. We're not going to have its own boiler plant or air conditioning plant or whatever. So there is some give and take as far as just where that line goes as far as the cost allocations are concerned. We've done this with the state before, where we have co-located school and central office functions. It's not their first time looking at numbers like this, so I think we'll be able to talk our way through it quite clearly. What's transpired in the development of these documents, and we'll just focus on the top sheet, which is the school proper. And again, we're talking less than 5% allocated towards the central office. Going with the actual costs for our contract, for the architect's contract, and adjusting the other line items based on what we've found to be historically appropriate and current experience on a project of this scale, of this budget value, and in our current context. We've made some suggested adjustments. Joe, let me ask one question. Is environmental consultant part of your scope? It is. All right. So then we thought we were correct in that. So things such as $190,000 that was allocated at grant application time for an environmental consultant is zeroed out. And for a moment, the money went back into owner's contingency and then went back up into the architect's line where it now belongs. So you'll see columns, original grant app, budget adjustments, which is our recommendations as of today. The current budget is the net of the grant plus our recommendations. And should we reach consensus, those first two columns that I mentioned will go away, and what is currently called current budget will then become the historical original budget, and everything will build on that in the future. So we can get these adjustments out of the way now and clean up the document by not talking about the environmental guy
Right.
went away.
So the construction manager, are they bidding two costs for pre-construction, and are those two different firms? Those are the same
No,
firm,
it's the same-
but they
it's
did two bids for, or two
Two different sets of services.
services.
For pre-construction, they're acting essentially as another consultant on the team. They're providing constructability reviews,
Okay.
estimating, et cetera. That we can receive from them as a hard number when their proposals come in. Associated with the construction is going to be construction staffing for their supervision, general conditions, and other costs that are more nuts and bolts related. And those will be articulated separately from the pre-construction fee. And those other costs get rolled into what's called the guaranteed maximum price, which includes all of the various trade contractor costs, allowances for things like temporary utilities, safety and security, and then their general conditions and their staffing. And all of that gets bundled up and becomes the GMP, the guaranteed maximum price. So that's really where the nuts and bolts of the construction estimate are going to fit in this matrix.
Okay.
What we found is by utilizing the construction number that was provided at grant application time and making the other adjustments as you see, plus and minus, in our go through these budgets, $500,000 has come out of what was already a less than robust owner's contingency for a
Right.
project of this size. We would be more in line with recommending 5% of the construction value to become the owner's contingency number to step off from the starting line. We don't have that now. Now
That'd be
with
like
the
another $1 million.
with the adjustments in here, we're at 1.48, call it 1.5 million in round numbers. And what did we say, 2.4?
Yeah, 2.4.
2.4 is what that 5% of construction would amount to. And Joe articulated the concerns and pressures on that construction number already. So if we were to find one point of concern in all of this, notwithstanding Joe's explanation of construction costs and the swings in the market at present, we think that that's kind of a sore point, and we kind of kept that in red text here just to draw emphasis to it. One minor detail, you'll see a little yellow bar of highlight in the Munis accounts regarding builder's risk. Traditionally, we see that being procured directly by the client, by the owner, the town. In conversations with finance expected that would be procured through the construction manager. It's going to get spent one way or the other. But it's more conventional from our perception to have the town's insurance provider engaged in offering that product to the town rather than a construction manager offering that. It just belongs there.
So the construction manager cost includes all the material?
Material, labor, the equipment, transportation to the site.
Everything to actually build it.
All of the things that, yes, if you took in a different context, a general contractor, you set it out to bid and one entity is going to provide all. This will be provided by multiple players, but still deliver the same result.
So they're going to end up providing us like a allowance sheet or something for everything that we that they are going to need? Like, is that how it works? Like with, like when you build a house, contractors like, here are your allowances for each room. Is that kind of what they're gonna?
That's what we're going to rely on Perkins Eastman to do predominantly. There will
Oh.
be allowances.
I mean, it's going to come out of that budget though. The
It'll all
48
be in
million.
that budget, but the vast majority of the dollars you're going to spend are going to be articulated on the construction documents and specifications. There will be allowances, like temporary heating is an allowance. We don't know how much we're going to need, so the CM sends $100,000 for utilities or something like that.
So the RFQ we went out for right now is just for the pre-construction work.
Correct. The qualifications are qualifications. The short list will then receive a request for proposals. The request for proposals will deliver numbers in two parts: the pre-construction fee, that consulting effort, and then based on the duration of construction that we provide to them and the dollar value, the general dollar value, they'll understand the general thrust of the project. They will come up with a staffing plan and costs for them to man the job, as well as based on the scope of the project, they'll be providing their expectation for general conditions costs, their site trailer, utilities, other things that are not directly going to wind up in the final product, but are contributors to getting it done.
And expected material costs.
Well, no, the material cost is then driven by the scope of work that's articulated by the architect. We're not there yet. It'll just be their management services and the ancillary things that will allow them to do their job and get the building built.
Okay.
What we build will be articulated in the construction
So
documents.
should this number be broken down so that when we get the fee packages from them, we know if we're in the right ballpark?
We will be comparing them submittal to submittal. We don't, at this stage of the game, break it down and budget general conditions. There are some rule of thumbs things that we'll compare to, but we're not going to break this estimate or this budget into what looks like an estimate. It's just not, not an appropriate effort at this stage of the development.
What if all three firms come up really, really high and we need to go back and negotiate or open it up again or whatever? Like, how do we know if it's like way out of our budget? What if they come back and say, okay, it's $45 million just for our work? Just
Well,
pull
then
a
that,
number.
yeah, something out of proportion like that would definitely be a red flag. And
I guess I just want to know, what is that proportion? Like, what's that trigger that says, oh, we can't afford like
we
any of
have
these
we have
people?
some historical data to reflect on and compare those proposals to, but it's not that we're going to break down the construction budget into a strict number of, well, I only budgeted X dollars for general conditions and you're too high. There may be things that they'll explain to us why, if the number looks high to us, they can articulate, and we will compare consultant or company to company. And having done this before, there is sometimes a very broad range in what people think they need in order to get the job done. Some companies might think that they can do the entire project with 3 staff assigned to the project. Someone else might come through with 7, and that'll be evident in their numbers when they present their staffing plan. So that's all stuff, all information that your selection committee will have in front of them, and we'll tabulate for them so that they can make an apples to apples comparison. So we're getting a little bit into the weeds on the construction line.
Well, not,
But,
I would just break it down to labor versus material. That's all, like, not in the weeds. I don't want to break all the labor down. I'm just saying there's going to be a labor portion, there's going to be a material portion. Like, is it half and half? Is it 75-25? Like, just general ballpark idea of where that would be.
If you're talking about what the construction managers will submit in their proposal, it's not going to have materials in it.
Oh, I know. That's what I'm saying.
that's-
Yeah,
But
I
this
think that-
number, this 48 million includes the material. So I'm saying, what's the ball? Like, what should we be expecting?
Right.
Are we expecting like $10 million that
Right.
they're going to be in those proposals?
Sorry, so you're kind of saying, just like we're showing you a pre-con estimated value, you would like to see this 48 million number, say,
Just
maybe
broken down
2
into-
million would be staffing and general conditions,
Yeah.
and 46 be material.
Right.
Just a general idea. I
Just
think that's
based on
what
our
you're saying. Like,
experience.
should we-
Labor versus material. Like,
Yeah.
what should we? What are these proposals that we're gonna get? Like, what's the ballpark? Are we under 10, under 5? Like, where are we gonna be?
Yeah, I haven't calculated that for you yet, but again, based on historical data.
Yeah,
we
just
can-
historical. Like, what other projects have been coming up with? That's all I'm looking for. Nothing.
But by the time you get there, we will have We will have comparison data for you.
Okay.
But again, that's not, we're not to that level of detail at this juncture.
But you have other data from other projects, so you can
Yes.
just say this is how much they charge in that one. Like
Yeah.
these are 3 examples.
And as I said, their proposal will be in various parts, the pre-construction fee for that consulting
Yeah.
effort.
Yeah.
And then their construction-related submission will have basically 3 parts: their staffing plan,
Yep.
their general conditions, and then their construction manager's fee, which will take care of their home office support and their profit.
Okay.
Now, just that one item alone, we've seen the CM fee range anywhere from just barely over 1% to a strong 3%. And that, when you multiply that by your assumed contract values, can be a factor in your bottom line comparison of company to company. And as you know, we weren't involved in your discussions about your architect selection, but I believe in the path that you took, the committee looked at, we have X number of firms, we shortlisted these, we think they can each get it done, we really like X, but if X is twice the price of Y, who is in second place, you're going to look at it and say, well, I might have liked one more than the other, but I'm not going to pay, overpay more than what Y was providing. So a lot of that will be self-evident with what they provide, and then we'll be able to give you a thermometer to check it as far as reasonableness against other projects.
Okay. I did confirm, I sent you the email that the town will not charge us permit fees, so
Yes.
that was a good one to take
Yeah,
off.
that was encouraging. That was 200 and some odd.
Should we take it off on the
300
second sheet
300,000?
as well? You have 17.5 on there for the central office. Should we remove that 17.5?
That, yes, that should come off of there as well.
Okay.
It did.
Top here.
Oh, I didn't credit
Oh.
it, yes. Yep, I'll credit that, yep.
And then probably add it back in somewhere.
I was gonna go
Fixtures,
straight to
furniture, and
the other
equipment. Hmm?
Owner contingency?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or FFE, one of the two. May split it, bring us back up to the 104 for contingency and put the rest into FFE.
Now, again, looking through this list of adjustments that we recommend, things such as the architect's fee, the owner's rep fee, those are contract numbers. Commissioning, the original budget was 24,000. We're recommending 125 based on actuals from other projects. I don't know to what level of effort folks thought you could achieve with 24,000, but we know that that's an area we have to invest more. FF&E coordinator is in the scope for the architect. So again, that line was zeroed, and those monies applied to the architect line. Moving costs, since we're not going to be doing a phased renovation, we really have one major move at the end. And depending on how much material you move from the existing building, it may just be a curriculum move. It may not be a furniture move.
Yep.
So we thought that number was stronger than it needed to be, and so we cut it about 40% from what was there. Again, town permit fees was a savings to the project, most notably because the town would not reimburse, or would not receive reimbursement from the state for a town permit fee. They don't even reimburse us for the fee that the state tells them we have to pay the state. So that's a win, both in project cost and in reimbursement. The pre-construction line item for the construction manager, again, was adjusted based proportionally on what we've seen in historical. Furniture and equipment, likewise, based on a dollars per student basis. We felt that this original 650 would be light unless you have fairly new furnishings in the middle school that you were intending to bring over. And after our meeting with your polite pit bull the other day, the superintendent, we learned that that there's not a lot of value in at least what impacts the teaching side, whether it's on the student side, if there are some things that can be reallocated to the new building. There may be some newer equipment and whatnot. But we felt that number should be enhanced. So a $1.2 million budget result for FF&E, and communications and technology just over that, which was the grant application number.
Where was this? Sorry, this breakdown of the stuff in the original grant application. I wasn't aware of this. Was this?
No,
It,
this is,
it was, actually, the
is-
columns that you're seeing labeled original budget is part of the submitted grant application phase cost estimate.
Okay.
No,
At
that-
least, yeah. For me, I mean, this was the first time we see that. I thought that's why I was asking the chair here, because I know for a while we were asking that
Oh, that's right, yeah.
breakdown from the prior PM, and
yeah, I don't think we ever saw it. this
maybe we
way.
didn't see it. Maybe it was somewhere
didn't
behind the
think we needed
scenes,
to
but
see
maybe
it.
we didn't see it. Okay. No, that's good to know. I just
Now, going back to,
thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, it was all under soft costs. We had one
Yeah.
big number for soft costs. It's like 6 million something.
Yeah, the phase cost estimate that I'm referring to, actually Lisa was kind enough to find it and send it over. Thank you. And that gave me the starting point as to what was submitted, and it ties back. The soft costs are broken down, and we've moved it around and allocated them as they should be.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Any discussion on this front sheet?
and allocations for furniture and technology and whatnot were part of the estimate that went into creating your referendum number. It may not have been communicated with the broader group, but it was captured there.
Okay.
So I guess the most significant takeaways here are that once we adjust the account values for what we anticipate, historically will be necessary for all these things that nobody wants to spend money on because you can't show them off, you can't sit on them, you can't
Yeah.
claim them as educational space, but they're necessary in order to get there. It really leaves the important numbers of furniture, technology, the construction value, and your owner's contingency. Those are really the four most important lines on this sheet.
And the reallocation of these funds doesn't impact reimbursement rates or anything like that? It doesn't make things more ineligible?
No, not at all. And once you approve this current budget column, when we submit your first progress payment request, we will also be updating the grant application numbers. What you gave the state was just an estimate. Now that you've met with all your consultants and you actually have an idea of where you stand, the state expects you to update that number at least 3 to 4 times around your project to make sure that it's kept up to date with your budget.
Okay.
Okay, so really the bulk of it, I mean, the construction cost one is flat, I mean, 86,000 higher, but basically flat against the original budget. But that's the one where you spent a lot of time in the beginning talking about some of the risks inherent there.
Do we have a risk chart somewhere that's logging all these risks, and do we need to have a
I
risk chart?
don't know that that we need a war board per se. I think as Joe articulated, material costs, cost of fuel, which is impacting all the trades. I've never seen a battery operated excavator before, so I get as petroleum goes up, obviously your site work is going to go up for equipment, and everything else needs to be transported. So those are real impacts that are incalculable at this
I
point.
hear horses are a lot cheaper than fuel.
Have you bought grain lately?
True.
Can't grow
Okay.
grain without fertilizer.
And then the going back to being the owner's contingency, like you highlighted in red, just having that be a little leaner than
It's
you'd
about
wanna
it's
be
about
at
a,
this stage,
about $1 million
right?
under target right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, if there were decisions that said, well, the original expectation for furniture and equipment is appropriate because, and
Yeah.
there was some hidden resource that we were unaware of, we could take that
Right.
that number and put it right back into contingency.
We're gonna make the students stand all day.
Standing workstations, yeah.
Standing conversations.
I hear muttering at the corner of the.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. Any other discussion on the middle school budget sheet?
One question. So with the exception of the contingency, which you just spoke to, is there any that you feel comfortable based off your experience, all obviously construction risks aside, with how these are allocated now?
Yeah,
Or is there any any other areas of concern that we should be considering?
Well, we felt that, the most appropriate route for us to take in this first pass was to give you our recommendations based on historical data. And that's what this represents. And if the committee were to decide, well, let's do a little bit less of X, then we could make that adjustment before we lock it in as the starting budget.
Right. And the bond council fees, even though the town has its own bond council, they charge us for that.
It's a decision that the town would have to make. Some towns, depending on budget, they would decide to pay that out of their own operating expense. But as of my last conversation with both Sharon and Mary Ann at our introductory meeting, it was decided that the bond council fees would be absorbed by the project. Now, instead of paying 100%, you might suggest that the project pays 50%, so that not everything goes to the town, but that it's a decision that the town would have to make. And so far, it is that it would stay within this school budget.
Does that include like closing type fees and all that? Is that what goes into $237,000?
Typically, a bond council, they do all the bonding fees, the transactions, the attorney little bit costs. So it happens once every fiscal year, and it looks like we're going to be about 3 fiscal years in for this project. Again, it depends on the actual bond costs. I haven't seen it. Comparing to another project this size, $237,000 is good. I wouldn't increase it, and I wouldn't decrease it either, not at this point, but it might be a source further down the road that if it is needed, we can take some from there.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Is there a motion to approve this budget as it's laid out?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Okay. So the the middle school portion of the budget's approved. All right, let's move on to the central office.
Approved as modified.
Second.
What did we modify?
The town permit fees would be reduced to zero, and that money
We didn't
returned to
do central
contingency.
office. That was just for that was just page one we off.
We were talking about that it needs to be done, yeah. It needs to be done on this one, on the central office.
So we just approved the middle school
Right.
portion of the budget. Now we're going to the
Yeah.
central office portion of the budget, which, yes.
I thought we were doing both.
Oh, yeah, no. We'll do them separately. Just keep everything separate when it comes to budget.
Especially after today.
After today, yes. Let's keep it all separate. Okay. So yes, we're gonna take the $1,750 out of the town permit fees. We're
Yeah,
gonna apply the $94.69 back to contingency.
And $8,031 will be applied to the FF&E line.
Yep. Okay. So we're saying the environmental consultant's part of the architect scope of work?
Yes.
An FFE coordinator is. We don't need to do as much moving. Okay. Any discussion on these numbers? So you actually reduced the construction manager budget on this one, even though there's risk for construction. What was the rationale there?
The 46 hours.
The 46,209, yeah, we decided to, instead of showing it at owner contingency, the construction number.
Yeah. Did you intend to add to it? Or did you take it from?
We decided to take from it instead of taking it from the owner contingency.
Yeah. That was, as opposed to the owner contingency, which at this point is only 95,000, that would have reduced you to about 50-ish thousand for owner contingency. So again, that money can be left alone and just have a tighter still owner contingency.
Okay, so because that's the largest amount, we just decided to take it out from there, but there's risk for doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
And the owner's contingency is where we cover risks from, so it's kind of a catch-22. But what we'll do is we'll return the construction manager, the GMP line to the original number,
Yep.
and we'll reduce the owner's contingency as a result.
And add 17.5 back into the old.
Yeah, and as you
I
can
mean, one way or the other is, I mean,
Yeah.
the risk,
Well,
if we're gonna have risks, it's gonna go into there anyway, so
Are we
whether,
gonna- Were we looking to
Peter
supplement
Paul,
the
it's coming
FF&E?
out.
we were looking to supplement technology because the original grant for central admin doesn't have any technology in there either.
And technology hardware is like computers and things
It's
like that?
computers, your
Your phone
servers,
system.
phone systems. Yes.
Security we usually buy as a bid package.
But
Any
wouldn't
wi- any
wouldn't we
wiring?
buy all that as like one input? Like gross,
It will be bought in one contract, say for the, we'll pick a piece, fire alarm.
yeah,
You're gonna buy one fire alarm bid,
yeah,
and the cost will be allocated between the school versus office space.
okay.
But we still need to have something against which to allocate it.
'Cause
So.
remember, we have to go to the state and show them two separate charges.
Yeah.
So we could have one invoice, one bid number, like you just stated, but we have to show them 10,000 went to central admin, and then the rest went to the other place.
So I guess from my point, I'd say leave it like you have it with the 46 coming out of GMP. So it gives us more flexibility with our owner's contingency. I'd like to not cut our owner's contingency if we can avoid it. So I think the only changes I would want to see is that 17.5 coming out of town permit, adding the 8031 back to FFE, and adding that 9469 back to the contingency.
And by doing that, we're back to the 104,469.
Yeah. Yep. Anyone on the committee disagree? Have thoughts? Discussion?
As
Okay.
good as guess as any.
It's like- Is there a motion to approve the central office portion of the budget as modified?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. It's passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
So the next set of documents that you received, we had an introductory meeting with Sharon, Marianne, town engineer, and also the town manager who stopped by our introductory meeting. And we discussed a couple of processes, a couple of forms, and out of that meeting, we put together the financial process for both school projects, for the central admin and Cromwell Middle School. As you will see, it's broken down to how we're gonna process invoices, requisitions, purchase order increases. We also talked about state change orders. We're gonna report and cash flows, the bonds, and the state progress payment request processing. All of these steps by steps have been reviewed and approved by both Sharon and Marianne. So they have agreed that I bring this to you for your review and approval. And as you can see, Rosanna, you will be signing off on a lot of these things.
Yay.
Attached to these steps, you are gonna see we propose these forms to the town of finance, and again, they have also reviewed and approved the use of these forms for both of these projects. We will be preparing each of these payment and reimbursement forms with each invoice that is submitted for your approval. And you will sign off, and once you sign off and I receive the meeting minutes, then finance will process for payment.
Do the invoices include work completed? Like, will I see what was actually done for that amount?
Yes, you will. Typically, the architect, any consultant invoice, you will see your total awarded, previously billed, currently, and you'll see a percentage of that, and you'll see a balance on that end too.
Okay.
So that's what we will be bringing to you. Is you will see a purchase order request form. Anytime we are going to be requesting any purchase orders from the town, this form will also accompany it. We will make sure that all the supporting documentation is followed per the town procurement guidelines. I have been provided that from Sharon. She's given me the guidelines to follow, so we are in agreement.
Okay.
And we also created a purchase order increase form, and we recommended that so that we all know and are aware of the changes that are approved and happen within the project. Again, both ladies at Finance have reviewed and approved and agree that the committee support this.
Is
moving
this
forward.
PO increase above, it will still have to fall within our overall budget, right?
Right, the PO increase form is, for example, Perkins Eastman has their schedule at 2.2 million. If further down the road they were to provide some services that is outside of the contract, and they would say $100,000, that PO increase form would be completed, where we would show that they started at 2.2, they need an additional 100,000, now it's 2.3, and everybody has agreed, and it's in the minutes that everybody has approved.
But that would come out of our contingency.
That would come out of your contingency, yes. And that's going to happen every time, even when the CM begins to do change orders, it's going to be the exact same process. It's just that the town manager must sign off on any of those legal documents before finance processes them.
Sure.
Would
The-
that go as an agenda item? Like I see in like section 1 and section 2, there's a bullet to send via email to the secretary as part of an agenda item.
Well, we will be emailing Lisa once we have, let's say, a packet of invoices for approval here. We will email Lisa the same package, sort of like we did at Colchester. We will put together a cover sheet, list all the invoices, the total that's approved, and she will have it for distribution for all of you to review
And
and
if
say.
But I'm
one of them
saying-
looks shady, we can ask for the details behind it.
Yes,
But
you,
will that same process be followed for the PO increase processing?
yes.
Okay.
So we will review and make a recommendation on everything, but the
Can
final
we just
approval.
include that in this listing?
Of course.
Okay.
Everything will be reviewed and recommended to you, and then you'll be the final approval. And again, nothing will get processed unless Rosina signs off on the form.
I know, I just want to make sure that it
Yep.
gets to Lisa in enough time without, it's not on here as a bullet, that's all.
Right, and this didn't include, I think it was discussed later down that after that week where Rosina advised us as to how soon Lisa needs to have something listed in the agenda and any packages.
Yeah, Friday before our meetings.
Yes.
Good.
So you'll see state change orders were also there. This is gonna start once the CM actually starts preparing any change orders. So that's the process that we're gonna follow there. You do not sign off on anything in that section, Rosanna. That's basically the town finance and the superintendent will sign off. But again, before any of those signatures happen, we will review all the forms and all the backup for accuracy. The reports and cash flows, it's going to be, now that you have blessed these two budgets, this will be your starting point. So month ending 10/31, you will see new expenses that have hit the project, if any, or any new encumbrances that
What
will
does
show.
MUNIS stand for?
That's the system for the financial
the
system
system.
for the town, yes. And finally, the last thing to process will be the state progress payment requests, and that's something that the superintendent will have to sign off on or enter. I can prepare the form with all the backup. If you would like for me to enter, I will need your okay for that to happen, or I can submit it to you, and you will have to upload it and submit it to the state.
But we can't do that until we get
That won't
the
happen till
authority from
yeah,
the state
till-
to proceed.
Yes, exactly, till after that. But we needed to have all these steps and processes already for everybody to
absolutely.
know. So when the time comes, we're not running around for approvals. We already know what's going to be done.
Okay.
So that's something that we can discuss offline. The town uses, yes,
Yep.
yes. Yeah.
Can I just understand a little better, like, what would this process look like? For instance, if we're ready to buy the flooring for a wing of the building, and we say, oh, we think it's going to cost us $600,000, will the flooring company then send us a bill for $600,000, or will it come from the construction manager, or will it come as a
that'll all-
monthly invoice of this is all the stuff you bought? Here, we need one check. How does that?
That'll all be within the summation of bids that gets rolled up into what's called the guaranteed maximum price. When the flooring gets installed and it's due for payment, that'll be on the CM's requisition for that month, where each trade contractor will have their requisition attached to it.
Okay.
And then those costs will be articulated there, so that'll be part of the payment to the CM on a monthly basis. So it'll be part of one huge transaction. You're not going to process individual bills
Yeah.
for
Right.
the flooring contractor
Right.
because the town is not holding the contracts.
Yep.
The CM will,
The CMS, okay.
So we'll have the data, but we're only signing off on the contractors.
on the CMs.
Yeah. So you'll see maybe a $1 million invoice from the construction manager, which will be made up of their general
All the
condition
stuff.
staffing and all of the trade contractors.
Okay. Very good.
Where you start to see multiple invoices is when you start dealing with the FF&E and technology bids, because they're outside of the scope of the construction manager.
Okay.
And and some of those, they become voluminous, because you
Yeah.
have chairs and tables and desks and
Yeah.
stuff like that. The CMs are rather concise with all the backup to them.
And the FFE budget breakdown, who does that? That's, the architect does that?
Well, we will work in coordination with the architects once they begin to put together what pieces will be in there. We will make
Okay.
sure that it's within the budget, and we will also take part with the meetings with OSCGR as to eligibles or ineligibles. And when we submit for PO requests for you to be able to purchase the chairs or the tables,
Right.
we'll prepare a summary and show you where we were at the time of OSCGR approval, and if anything of bids came in, or where we stand, and
Okay.
compare also ineligibles and eligibles at the same time.
I'm quickly seeing why some schools opted for tables over desks.
It becomes expensive if down the road.
Okay, very good. Do you need us to, this is just for information, right?
Well, it's information, and if you agree, also, we would like to make it part of the PMP, of the management plan, right?
Right, to become part of the project management plan, we'll have those forms as exhibits to the project management plan, and that will incorporate your bylaws or whatever, however you want to label your internal rules, so that everything is in one concise package that
Okay.
the whole team can refer to.
Yeah, I'd say let's table a vote on it to review it.
Yep.
And then, if we're gonna roll it into a bylaws, we'll maybe start doing that.
Yeah, and the motion will be important since you will be signing off as the authority.
Yeah, we got a couple weeks though, right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Not that many, but yes.
Yeah, look through this a little bit better. Okay. Anything else from Arcadis? Okay, so we're up to new business now.
Do we have a review non-architectural timeline, interview schedule?
Do you have a timeline update for us? Any non-architectural timeline?
Knowing that you're proceeding with your CM solicitation, you've got your commissioning following behind that, and that environmental is part of the architect's scope. Right now, I think, until you get the CM sorted, there's nothing else that you'll have to concern yourself with right now.
Okay, good. And just to remind everyone, the commissioning agent RFQs are due Friday, the 21st, and the CMs are due next Friday, the 28th. All right, let's move on. New business. Going with the visitation findings. Let's start with Ledyard. This was just Ledyard and Beaman, right? We didn't have another one?
Correct.
Okay. So who attended the Ledyard site?
Dr. Macri.
Do you want to get up to the phone? Yeah. I'd like to hear everyone's perspectives. So let's start with the good. What were good things we noted at Ledyard?
It looked really pretty. But yeah, it looked really nice. Everything was, when you walk in and you look at it without any students in the building, the first thing you think of is, wow, this is awesome. And then obviously the educators, we tend to be, as Jack calls me, a pit bull. We're just a little cynical because it can't be that beautiful and actually work.
Dr. Macri, can you just level set us in terms of grades, number of students, kind of just so we understand how we're
How big the
compared
school was.
to them?
Yeah, they're about, I think they said 600,
So it's just slightly bigger than.
slightly bigger. Lower level and upper level. All the grades,
It was a renovate, right? It
Right,
was a
renovate is
renovated
new.
project.
6, 7, 8.
Yes.
6, 7, 8.
Renovate is new.
As far as reimbursement, the town was very adamant about sticking to what they would be reimbursed for. So what they needed for programmatic reasons, and even as far as like the auditorium, the gymnasium, all the bigger spaces, everything was cut to exactly what would be
minimum use,
reimbursed
yeah.
for the minimum requirement, the maximum requirement.
Was it a like STEAM theme or?
No.
Okay.
No, they had some, some things that we're all looking at, but no, it was no STEAM theme.
Okay.
It was very basic. They just gave us a lot of, they were very, I think that those of you that were with me they were very upfront about all the things that they believe. They didn't fix any of the, and there were more problems than which they started with. That's to no fault of the architect or anybody who worked on the project, except for that the town would not provide any more funding for areas. So, for example, the auditorium, you can't fit the entire school in it. You can only fit a certain amount of kids. This is the one that really, the cafeteria, you can't even fit one grade level in there.
Oh my
Have to have
goodness.
So that was,
multiple waves, yeah.
yeah, it was about half the size of our cafeteria right now.
Right now?
Right now.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
so you can't all eat at the same time. Everyone, so I like educators we all like everyone coming in one entrance for reasons as far as like getting coverage. You don't have any coverage for watching kids coming in the building. So it looks like it's a great big space, but because of where it veers off, you walk in and it veers off too late. So you have all these kids pouncing, into the building all at once, and you don't veer off quick enough. So there were a lot of things that we talked about that were negative, but like I said, that was what the town wanted. They wanted the basic square footage, whatever was reimbursable. So they made the gymnasium, I think maybe had 50 seats in it, 50 bleachers that were pushed back. So the furniture, they've had to they purchased a lot of new furniture to make it fit in the rooms more, to be more accommodating. So, I don't know if am I missing anything, Kendall? Matt?
I think was that the one where they said, the floors being.
Oh, the floors, yeah.
Having to be, resurfaced. I think they said
So
twice a year. but-
Right, so that to me,
Very
I
high
get, and I don't know how
maintenance
Ken
flooring, yeah.
feels about that. It is a big project. It's a huge maintenance project. I've been in how many buildings? You buy the big machines, you pull the furniture out once a year in the summer. You
Yeah.
do spot checks. It is a big job. However, I don't know. It would be great if we could get the rubber flooring. I don't know if putting that into this project when we already had to cut so much off would be worth it. I still feel that because we're only 4 schools and this would be one, it might be worth cleaning the floors and leaving them the way they are.
What do we have at WIS?
We have all carpeting, which is
In
what we-
WIS?
everything.
Could I
It's
jump in for
terrible.
one thing?
Yeah, Blaze.
Hello?
Yep, go ahead, Blaze.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what Anna said. There are repercussions that you don't realize that are going to happen. So, for instance, because the auditorium does not fit the entire school, if he wants to have a whole school meeting, it has to be in the gym on folding chairs, which have to be stored. They cut back on storage as one of the places to cut. But one of those storage rooms is now just for chairs. So these repercussions continue, and that's something the school has to live with now for the next 50 years.
Right. So we learned a lot. I feel that we learned a lot of things that we don't want to do.
Blaze is done. He hung up instead of hit mute.
Mic drop.
We'll call him. Oh, can we call him?
Should we call back?
So those were the things, as far as classroom sizes, what we realized and we've known all along, our science labs, we don't want fixed furniture.
Those ones with the chairs, right, with the rollers.
Yeah, want something that's more, and we
I
have to
think,
be
yeah.
careful too, because you guys went to Beaman. I did not go to Beaman, and I'm sure they told you they don't like that all the chairs are on wheels.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you get two different perspectives, right? They said,
Right.
do not do that.
Oh, right.
Whereas,
Beaman said do
yeah.
not.
Well, the kids
Yeah.
will just be rolling back and forth all day long.
It might be good. It
I would be
actually might
rolling back
really,
and
yeah,
forth.
me too. And I'd still be fully engaged with ADHD. So that, as far as Ledyard, I feel like we learned a lot of things of, and a lot of things that we've done over time, right? They cut storage, they cut space, so then they don't have enough office space. So they don't have enough office space, so then closets become office space, and that's what we've been doing forever.
Yeah, they ended up building a storage shed. I mean, it's a large shed, not to minimize it. It was a very large storage space outside just to keep some of the equipment they needed for the sports.
Right.
After the fact. And they had central office, or no, not central office. They just had their middle school office, beautiful glass windows. And they said, well, this doesn't work. We have kids come in for counseling. They want some privacy. So then they put up little curtains on the inside, and it looks really cheap now. So, it's just like kind of just having that foresight, thinking about, what should we use here? What would look nice, but this isn't a corporate office space. It's what's the intended use?
Right.
That's all.
So the confidentiality piece as far as guidance, and we had different perspectives too. My perspective of having guidance, I want it semi-attached to the office, but I'd like a completely different entrance, because we have kids who go to guidance for safe spaces. We also have kids who walk right into the office, and then they have to go to guidance, and immediately they see the administration, and they may have been in trouble for something else, and the assumption is that they're in there because they're in trouble, but really they should be in there getting help in the guidance office or other spaces. So overall, I think we learned a lot. It was a great visit. I think they didn't have a choice, really. It was what it was. This was how much money they were getting reimbursed. That was all the committee was. They weren't willing to move on that, and they weren't willing to go to the town and ask for any more money in order to make it.
And actually, they said they came in at the end of the day. They
$4
were-
million
they
over,
were,
yeah.
They were
Under-
they came
under.
in under budget, but now it's
Oh.
like a shame. So
Yeah.
what can you do with the auditorium?
Yeah.
It's
Right.
landlocked. Can't make it any bigger now.
Right, exactly. So I think as we move forward, knowing that, like, for example, the furniture component, yes, it's absolutely necessary and everything that we need, but are we going to take a risk when we get to the point of where we're saying we're cutting storage space? You can't change that storage space later. So let's take the risk with the furniture, because yes, we could possibly go a little cheaper, less expensive, but you're never going to be able to get that storage space.
You can always eventually
You-
upgrade a little bit at a time,
could-
those things, right?
Right. I think those
You
were
can't add a
things
new
that-
wall.
You can't.
Unless it's unless it's exterior,
Yeah.
right?
Can't add
You
the
can't add
bleachers
yeah.
after the gym is built,
Interior, I'm saying that's right. Interior, you're really stuck. Like you can't
Yeah.
unless you're going to start absorbing other spaces.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is he back on?
Yeah, he is.
Okay.
Blaze, are you on the phone now? I thought I heard him coming.
I thought I heard it too.
Yes, I'm back.
Do you have anything else to add on Ledyard?
No, I mean, I think that's really it. The super, and I forgot his name, I'm sorry, kept stressing you do not want to give up your programmatic need for a short-term fix, because according to what I've heard.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, it was a 3-floor school. 6, 7, 8.
Interesting.
That said, though, they also had very long travel paths, and that was part of the result of they were renovating an existing facility. We have a lot more options going new that we can address some of those issues, but from the cafeteria to the other end of the school, it was an awful long travel
Now,
path.
did they add an extra floor or wing, or did they just use the square footage that they had?
The educational wing went up, but everything else was existing.
Okay, so they added square footage to their overall site.
When you walked in, remember that area when to the right
Yeah.
was always there, that area to the left? That was all new. I think
That was
that's
all
what he
new.
said,
That's
right?
what I think it was.
Yeah, so that
'Cause,
whole
you
area,
had
the
to keep
science labs.
50% of the
Yeah,
existing.
right.
and then-
Yeah, what like pushed them to do a renovation? What was the age of building, town growing, shrinking?
What
Pre-
they, and what they
It
said
was a
too
7
is
and 8 previously.
it was a 7 and 8. It was more than one project at a time, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So they were doing everything in
Yeah.
They were redistricting
Yeah.
the district, and so they moved a 6th grade in.
A 6th grade in,
right.
yeah.
Similar to Beeman. Okay.
Ken, did you have anything you want to add? Okay. All right. How about Beeman? Oh, the cafeteria was.
Are we starting with
So I don't understand
What
how
are
that
goods
happens.
or
Like,
bads?
I mean,
Blows
I
or
just,
opportunities?
Well, let's just get that one out of the way, because that's obviously like. So there's going to be an acoustic engineer who's going to come in and check for things like this, right? So I don't know how an acoustic engineer missed an open cafeteria concept in that building. Like, they have a hallway that's their cafeteria that
That
is
won't
open
happen
to
with us,
3
'cause-
floors of academic wing.
That will never happen
It's
with
like
us.
what you
As,
see on a
as,
college
as I told
campus.
Joe the other day so politely, as he called me a polite pit bull, we're not doing that. There's only a certain amount of flexible spacing that we are going to commit to, because then it becomes counterproductive, and that's the exact reason why.
Right.
So as you all know, I had 2 years into that project, but as things changed and fluctuated, and they were convinced that let's have all this flexible spacing because it's such a great idea, until you actually put children in there and you try to have lunch,
Yeah.
and there's an acoustic nightmare. So you can have flexible spacing, and it makes
It's
sense.
got to be quiet or
You cannot.
secluded.
Cafeteria is not the place. You could use it for other things, but it needs to be functional first as a cafeteria.
The innovation center was
Awesome.
fantastic.
Thank you. It was phenomenal.
I mean,
wasn't it?
it's a dream.
I need about $10 million more if you want me to do that.
Oh, it's 1,000 students in there too, so it's their only middle school.
But we could do something similar, like grouping all of the STEAM specialized classes together, like your audiovisual
we're-
room, your computer room, and if
We are.
robotics, if we could put it
But
all
that
into like a
was-
nice little suite and call it something fancy, then I think it gives the impression that it's like a really fun,
We are.
And that was a good example.
cost
That was
effective.
I was gonna
Thank
say,
you.
That was a good example of where that like more flexible hallway, right? Like they kind of have that hallway there with the computer lab, so it's still like a kind of free flowing
Right.
space, right? But it's not like all hard walled.
I don't think we need
Apart.
a drone cage. That might be a little
It's pretty cool though,
excessive.
but no, we do not need
I
a
don't know
drone.
why we.
But that was a very cool layout and setup.
Yeah, that suite was amazing. I really liked it. We need to do something like
You
that.
have to make sure that when you have that, we have the opportunity to be able to train and, first of all, purchase all the materials in order to do that. Those materials were purchased with grant money
Grants.
because they're an alliance district. And then we have to make sure that we have the staff in order to do that, the training and everything else to do it. So I agree, it is awesome.
As long as we get the space for it, it can be a work in process.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't start off right up-
Little by
As
little.
Little by little, we can build up and get what we need for that space that we want to create.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just next level. It's fantastic. It'll be such a benefit to the students. I mean,
It is awesome.
it really is. And then you maybe even incorporate the media center to it somehow, because the media center there was literally a room with books.
Yeah.
It was very tiny. It was probably the size of like if we put a wall right here. That's what it. Yeah, that's what it was.
Because everything is
It was
digital now.
1,500 square feet, right? Approximately, we could.
That's what I'm saying. If we made it as part of like
was about 1,500
the
square feet.
innovation suite, maybe it's like all part of that, learning,
Oh, yeah.
advanced learning common area.
It's a learning common area.
Yeah.
It's the hub. You want it
Because
to
you can
be-
even have books lining the whole walls all around, so it's like everything else. You could be creative how you figure that out. But you're right. Most things are digital, but
Yeah.
some,
We still want our kids to have their hands on books, but
yeah.
and so much has changed with the classroom libraries too. Our classroom
Well,
library.
I mean, I don't know about kids today, but when I was in middle school, like the library was a place you'd go to focus on your projects or to have some silent reading or to work with your partners on projects and things of that nature. So if we don't have like a library or media center per se to do that, you'd have to have some kind of space for that. Maybe
Now-
cubbies or something. I don't know.
And also, the staff at Beaman said they really didn't use those breakout spaces as
Yeah.
much as they
In the pods.
anticipated
Yeah.
within the pods. So maybe we could utilize some
That
of that
space.
space to create more of the
Right.
STEAM program, or that STEAM room.
That's going to be, so
we
what
gotta
we're,
just,
we're going to do something similar as far as STEAM and interdisciplinary, but because we're going the STEAM route with the arts, adding the arts, that's exactly how we should be doing this, like exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
It may be difficult to figure out, but I have faith in Mike.
Well, what are your thoughts on having those breakout rooms within the pods, the education wings? Like, do you think those are needed? It sounds like they weren't using them at Beeman at
Well,
all.
they said they had, there was only 2 classrooms that could keep eyes on them. So,
If you have too many, so it's great to have breakout rooms if you have the staff to utilize them, because we can use small rooms, right, for intervention, and
well, they
that was
weren't
the
even
purpose.
rooms.
There weren't rooms. They're
They
just
were
like
just
in
like
the
those
hallway of the
open, like it was like
Oh.
a smart board, and then some kind of, I'd say, more
Beanbag
casual
chairs.
Yeah,
furniture.
like 3 or 4 seats around a little table. Type of thing.
Kind of like in where the lockers room were, or
Great
lockers
if-
were, but in a pod, like in a team's pod. But
Right.
the way they were positioned, only 2 classroom teachers could see it from their classroom.
Yeah.
You're really great in like corporate America to house.
I was going to say, when
I
you
don't know
don't
about
need to
schools.
watch, you know, we have to have our eyes on kids all the time. So
So that would just help us
The high
with
school,
space, right? We
maybe,
wouldn't need to allocate that extra space for those areas if we don't have to. Yeah.
We also talked about lockers, I think, at both the schools.
Yeah.
And I think there were some ideas that, lockers aren't needed. There are some ideas as like they are, but don't have
I think you do need
design the
lockers.
locks in certain ways.
Where
No,
you
I'm
gonna
just
put your
saying it's
coats?
some of the
Uh-oh.
they just felt
The
that,
locks.
like,
Yeah.
But yeah.
there's so many pros and cons.
Yeah.
It's so,
But just even thinking about if you do them and you double stack them and how do you assign them and the
and a lot of the
transition
kids are
periods
still
and stuff,
small,
yeah.
and they can't reach the top ones.
Yeah.
So you're still, there's a lot to think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would love it if we didn't have lockers, but because we do so much with technology, I don't like the kids having to carry their coats around all the, or
Yeah.
whatever, that part of it, but
That's true.
it adds to instructional time because passing time is less. That's why I like it, but
Because
The-
kids don't have to go to their lockers between classes, you mean?
no, because they're not really carrying as much as they used to. Remember, we were,
Oh my
we, had,
gosh,
we
yeah.
were carrying
Oof.
so much, and we
Yeah.
would refuse to carry backpacks.
Right.
But the coat piece, them carrying, some kids, you can give them a lot, they want to carry all of their belongings with them. It doesn't matter. I don't know. I think
What if
we could do some more
instead
research
of-
on that.
Instead of lockers, we have areas within each classroom where they can hang a coat and stuff, or
Yeah, little cubbies where they
or
can
like
put
something
their
underneath their
coats.
chairs they can store their backpacks. Might be better.
Yeah.
I don't know.
On the back.
But then what about all the sports equipment the kids bring with them? They
So
need
the-
sort of somewhere to put that.
Hopefully.
The gym locker rooms are
Yeah,
hotel
like when they
lockers?
get the the locker rooms, they can drop their stuff off for athletic, whatever, just like they do for band. They drop their
Right.
instruments off in the morning in band room, and then they go
Right.
because they're expensive. I
That's-
think we need to be creative and read about a lot of the stuff that's different right now because
So we should put that on kind of our running list
Yeah.
to study a bit
Just-
more.
Because that would probably impact interior walls and interior square footage allotments and things like that, right? If we don't, I'm guessing. Is that just a guess? I don't know.
and
Sounds
some
like-
people. Yeah, the corridor.
Sorry, can you? That's okay.
It'll address the affect the quarter width and how we address
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was something that happened at Ledyard when we went there. Because we right now have pretty big hallways with the exception of the 7th grade hall because it was a high school. So when the kids are opening their lockers here, they're not on top of each other, which is a beautiful thing because that's when a lot of bullying or negative interactions happen. Kids get frustrated. So that space is going to dwindle, right? With this new building, I don't think we're going to have the same size hallways because we need them for classrooms and all
Yeah.
of our other areas. Some people will probably not be happy because they want their kids to have the experience of using a locker, but the truth of it is that most of the kids come to the high school and then stop using them anyway.
Right.
They don't like to use them. So it's an elementary. They have cubbies, they go to whist,
I
they have
mean,
lockers.
To
and
your
they-
point, they're not carrying like all the books that they used to carry.
They're not
They're
carrying,
like a
no.
Chromebook and maybe a book.
Right, and if they can't put their items in there, like the sports or whatever they bring for after-school activities, because they're tight, they're small, so we need to have a space for them.
Hey, just a couple other things though that were kind of when we went in there, there's people with chop saws and stuff. So it's like, well, what's going on? Oh, they're adding depth to the stair tread.
Oh, in the auditorium.
Yeah, to the auditorium. Like someone got hurt
Yeah.
going down there.
Yeah,
and
the step was for
either
like
they made
6
it just
inches
at
and
the bare minimum level of depth on the stair
I
tread.
don't understand
and,
how that
they had to
auditorium is
rip
ADA
everything
compliant.
up and redo it and reframe
It's on
it,
the
so.
right-hand side. I went and found it. Like
Oh, it
there,
is?
yeah,
There's
you
an
can
entrance?
access it from, you go in the ground floor, you can access it to the side ramp, and then that's how you get to all the 88
Oh, jeez.
seats.
Oh.
John, did they end up leaving the same, just redoing it, it's in the same location, or did they,
What's that? You talking about the
the
steps?
auditorium?
The step, yeah, it's in the same location.
Same, yeah.
The steps,
So
the
that
steps-
step.
That step was probably 7 inches wide, and it was just dangerous.
Yeah.
I don't know how that even
7 inches
got
deep,
through.
right?
Yeah,
Deep.
7
Yeah.
inches, yeah.
Yeah,
It was
so just
maybe
case in
8
point,
tops.
like, you know, I don't know whether they cut it close, but so now they're having to redo it. The gym is really nice, big space.
Yeah.
But where they put the entrance and exits, it's right under where the basketball hoop is.
There's two
And the
sides.
basketball hoop isn't centered, and then the way the bleachers are, they can't open the bleachers because it spills into the basketball floor, and the other bleachers are so far from the basketball
Right.
floor.
Yeah,
It's just like little,
that's
like,
so
it's like,
weird.
man, like you're gonna, like, have to put a lot of money in to redo it, or just live with.
I don't understand why they have bleachers that come out all the way and they come out right onto the basketball court.
Yeah.
I just didn't- I
So
didn't
something
understand
wasn't
what
like
they were thinking.
Someone
Yeah.
put the lines down wrong. I don't know.
Installed the
Is,
food.
is
that's
this
what they
was this
say.
one a new building or ad
new
reno?
building.
New building.
building,
building.
yeah.
They lost their associate superintendent, that's why.
I think
We gained it, though.
building off the auditorium, I thought really good use of space was behind the auditorium. They had all their instrument
That was
storage. It was a
nice
nice
wide
big open hallway. So they didn't have instrument storage in another room. So like where,
There's a
like,
hallway that facilitated access to classrooms, right? Other
yeah.
other
So then
music-based
off of that they had their
Right.
music
It's
classrooms.
like a music suite.
It
in the
created
back.
a walkway so you can get from one stage, one side of the stage to the other without having to use a sight curtain.
Yep.
But then also, you know,
Pre-performance hangout area.
if you go into like a
exactly,
small instrument locker storage, it can get really chaotic and stuff. So it's just a big open space.
The band room though
Long.
was weird because
So
it
I-
wasn't like a real band room.
So I talked to them. I asked
They
that
use that.
question.
They use the
They don't
stage.
ever. They don't have band during the day as a full grade band. So like where we would do, like we have 6th grade band with about 50 performers. They will split it in half. So they only ever had up to 25 bands
They never had the whole band practice together.
in the
In the
the
stage.
band room. They'll use the stage.
Oh, the stage
Use
to
the stage
practice
for that.
together.
when they need to do that.
The other
So
thing
that
too-
was I'm sure like a give and take
The other thing, too,
how
is
their
they,
scheduling works.
Yeah.
they had a pit, too. Right, and, which, is that can't be that. Is that expensive to just dig a hole and put concrete around it? That can't be a huge added expense, would it be? And it would add storage, too.
What did they use for a platform? Did they have
It was a
me-
wooden platform.
So that so it was
Manually
mechanically
removed.
manually raised.
Yes.
We've done those before. They they're not overly expensive. Certainly, they become expensive if they're hydraulic, right?
Yeah.
If they're electrical. But what we found with those is that they're very time consuming to reset. You know, go up and down.
No.
It's an option. We can look
Yeah,
at it.
just, you don't want it?
Option of up, you know why it's there, John. we all know why it's there.
Well, yeah. I
But
just was
unless
thinking
it's
storage. I was
hydraulic,
thinking storage, too, though.
it could take.
You can
It's
still
like-
store under a stage.
The understage
though.
storage was really good. They
I don't
they
think you
said they
need
used that.
I don't
That's
think you
true,
need a
okay,
pit
yeah,
to
yeah,
have
yeah.
understage storage.
Unless because
I
it
was just
literally
curious
takes
cost-wise.
manpower
have, like,
to
a
like take
production
it
of
down.
a band.
And,
I was just
Yeah.
curious cost-wise, too,
Our middle
so,
school's not going to do that.
okay.
No.
They
So
do that
I
on
do
tracks.
have a hopefully quick question
I don't
on
think so.
on the auditorium itself, especially because it's such a big space for us in this project. One thing at Beaman is a good portion of the auditorium is on a fairly steep slope. How does that factor into the square footage? Is it the square footage of the angled surface? No. So we could basically just have a big IMAX theater and fit
Yeah.
everybody in
And fit
there.
more
Make sure
seats.
it's ADA compliant, all that. But
Yeah.
so that was one thing. I just had our
Look
current
like a
middle
college
school in
So-
mind.
lecture hall. Yeah.
That was part of the keeping of that was the existing auditorium. There were certain parts that they kept, right? Wasn't that part, was that,
No, that's an all
I don't-
new building because they took
Yeah.
down the.
No,
oh, I thought they were keeping that auditorium. That was out at, oh, so they did end up taking it down? So, and they got reimbursed for
I
that
guess.
auditorium?
I don't know about
Or,
the
yeah.
financial part of it, but I know that was, the old auditorium was completely demolished. That's the parking lot
Oh,
now.
I thought they were trying to keep it, okay.
Yeah, they did say that they can't fit the whole school in there.
Well,
So
you have
that
1,000
was
kids,
that
yeah.
was a
But they have
a-
yeah,
down-
1,000
Yeah, they
kids.
do have 1,000
Well,
kids, but
si-
it was what four.
Since we're on the topic of
400?
auditorium,
Yes, can we explain?
Okay.
I was so confused that meeting today about the auditorium. Because there's a square footage allotment, but then there's the seating allotment. I was always told
Right.
you're only going to get that reimbursement rate for half the population.
that's correct. The seating area of an auditorium is considered limited eligible for reimbursement. So you get 50 cents on a dollar compared to what you would the same square footage of classroom space.
Right.
You can make it bigger. They don't tell you that you can't do things. They just tell you what they will and won't pay for. But again, when you consider your overall square footage that your student population demands, this 83,000 number we're talking about, where do you want to invest that? Do you want to invest that in a seating area that's empty most of the time, most of the days, or do you want to put it into some other educational feature? Now, when we walked the existing building, we heard, the rationale behind having seating for all students. 100% of that extra, from 50 to 100%, is going to be ineligible, and the town's going to
But we can do
incur
a
that
waiver,
complete.
right?
There are opportunities. You can seek special legislation to
Sorry.
try to get things, forgiven. But in the metrics, when they're looking at their checklist, they're going to look at that and say, this exceeds the standard. We're not going to pay you for X.
So our
Even-
budget assumes they're not going to pay us, but we're expecting to at least submit a waiver because we have programmatic use for all that extra area.
And you can make your argument, and many times people succeed, sometimes they don't. But it is something that needs to be pursued. It's not something that's
And we
a-
would need to
a
get our
rubber stamp.
legislators involved with that.
Special legislation, you would want to get your local legislature.
So
involved
they
to
actually
see-
the legislators take their time to vote on each town's waiver.
There is a section of the grant bill loaded with phrases saying, notwithstanding the rules in X, we're going to allow you to do such and such. And that's, I think, a little bit of the horse trading that happens in politics, where I need something for my town and you want support for this waiver in your town, and they somehow work it all out. And again, there are times when you can get consideration at the department level. There are other times when you have to go for legislative relief. And not every time you ask for legislative relief do you get exactly what you asked for. But
So
it is
how
something could be pursued.
when do we have to submit this waiver? This is different than the waiver she was talking about this morning. This waiver she was talking about this morning was if we had to expand beyond the 83,000 square feet or whatever it was.
Well, again,
Right.
if you're seating 100% of your student population in your auditorium, you are taking a bite out of that $83,000 that
Right.
could be used somewhere else.
Right.
So if you're going to ask for a waiver for the funding component of that, then the next question is it worth going for a waiver for the space standard to get that extra square footage forgiven?
Yes.
So, I mean, these are discussions that have financial impacts, and ultimately, from Joe's presentation, we're already in a market that's putting tremendous pressure on what we think we're getting, and the
Yeah.
more we try to do with that same dollar is,
I can tell you right now, the
difficult.
community won't stand for anything less than what we have today, which is that full. We had many people come out saying we want the full auditorium, we want the large stage, and all that stuff because it's going to be used throughout the community over and over again, nonstop.
and
Not
there-
just the middle school
And there are two ways
students,
of getting there. One is to work within your 83,000 and change of program space.
which I think is what our original plan was going to
And
be.
and then, whether you get the reimbursement enhancement or not, you at least have the space.
Okay.
Yeah, but to be technical, they'll reimburse 50% of the space, no matter how big we make it, but the actual physical seats themselves, they will only reimburse for half the population?
Yes, there was a calculation, the stage, the wings, the things that are supporting what happens on the stage,
Yeah.
those are all looked at as educational features, because if you have a drama class, they have to perform somewhere.
Yeah.
But audience area,
Audience, yeah.
they don't look at the same way. That's why it's,
Right.
again, half of the population, and then they pay you 50 cents on a dollar.
So they won't accept a waiver to increase that seating limit?
Correct me if I'm wrong, and Jack has, and I've pushed back. So because, I know, everyone's surprised. Because it is a STEAM-focused school, so STEAM, including the arts, including performance, theater, my understanding is when we apply for the waiver, they are going to look at programmatically, what does this entail? And so I'm pretty sure we'll have a good shot.
The more cogent your argument, the more successful you're likely to be.
Yeah.
In fact, I even know a school that has 2 gymnasiums.
I'm pretty convincing.
And there was a programmatic reason why, well, they inherited 2 gymnasiums, and they kind of grew into the space, but they had a full-fledged educational argument for why they still needed to continue in a renovated facility having 2 gymnasiums. And they were successful in getting a space waiver for that. So perhaps, likewise, especially in a STEAM focus, the arts argument to be able to have that increased seating capacity could win.
So what's the timeline for submitting that waiver?
Before we submit our documents for final approval to go to bid, we would want all of these boxes checked and all of these waivers secured. So we have a period of time. It may be something that we want to start talking with OSCG when we have our next opportunity to meet with, once they assign a reviewer and we get the opportunity to sit down with somebody on the technical side of the house rather than the financial side, we can have that discussion. And they might agree that that's a path that can happen within the department. And if they say that the department doesn't think that they have room to move there, then you would look at the legislative option.
Okay. So we have a couple of weeks to start figuring this out?
Yeah.
No? Yes?
Yes, yeah, I think that there's time. In fact, I think you don't get assigned a reviewer until we're securely on the priority list.
Because she was asking about seeing a waiver this morning for space, so that's why I was confused as to when the timeline for submitting waivers is.
She wondered if there was something applied for at grant application time.
Right. So there's nothing preventing us from submitting it earlier. Is there any advantage?
Well, they would have to design something
I see. So you'd
defined
have to
well
show
enough
what it looks
to
like
articulate
first
the need.
to add it. Okay, that makes sense to me.
Yeah,
So-
we're not quite ready to
No.
ask for
No,
anything.
yeah.
You really want to go to the well once
Yeah.
and collect it all together.
Perfect.
Right.
Okay.
You don't want to do it piecemeal and then
Right.
say, well, why didn't you ask? No, we want to do it all in one shot.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, good. All right. Any other things we want to add to the Ledyard or Beeman visits that we want to record?
A few items I had on my list was that there was no student all gender bathrooms,
Yep.
that the bathrooms were outside of the pod doors or the doors closed next to the cafeteria. So when they closed the doors, the students had to leave the pod to use the restrooms. The location of the nurse's office was on one side of the school, like all the way on one side of the school. So, and it was as far away from sixth grade as possible. So I imagined my own sixth grader leaving the top corner and walking through the open air cafeteria and stopping and talking to every single one of their friends, and then making it to the nurse's office 45 minutes later.
Passing out on the way over there.
So
Oh
that's
my
the
gosh.
funny, path, but also the nurse having to access students in an emergency would be nerve-wracking to have to traverse the whole school that way. So I think a more centrally located nurse's office would make sense.
Yeah. Good observations. Anyone else?
I had gone on a separate visit with John, and one of the things that he pointed out is the cabinetry for storage in the classrooms
Oh, yeah.
was butted completely up to the
Oh, my
ceiling.
gosh.
So the teachers would have to use OSHA-approved chairs to get into their cabinetry.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's probably because you have to have what is it, 18 inches above cabinet space, and you can't have anything on it because of the sprinklers. And we all know that teachers are going to put stuff in there. So they probably solved that problem by butting up, but created a problem of, unless you're a 6'4" teacher, you don't have access to these cabinetries.
Don't worry about it, we figure it out.
Yeah, OSHA-proof chairs.
The only,
Swivel chairs work really well.
All those chairs on wheels.
the only other thing I noted, and obviously we had lots of time before we even talked about this stuff, was the painted on dry erase boards instead of like real dry erase boards. Bad. They were not cleanable at all. And the teachers weren't using them, so it's like they have 2 full walls of dry erase boards, but they're using one wall as bulletin board and one wall as I'm like, why would we spend all this money for 2 full dry erase pens? As shaking it. No, are you? Do we need 2 full walls of dry erase? Okay, good.
So I think we really need to look at the combination of furniture and floors and
Yeah.
how they react with
And-
each other.
And making sure that the cabinetry, make sure the storage area in general that the teachers need, they're going to use. Because I was opening up cabinets, and they were just throwing stuff in there. Like, I was like, this would have been better suited for like a drawer or maybe a bucket or something not just thrown haphazardly into these cabinets. It didn't make any sense.
So their desks they didn't have a lot of desks with drawers. The teachers, right, didn't have desks with drawers. The teachers had a lot of tables
It was
without
just a table, yeah.
places
And a
to.
tiny little 3-drawer
Put their
filing
materials.
cabinet, that's all they had.
And having a principal suite, because in Beeman, the principal secretary was like a separate room, so people would go straight to the principal without like going through the
Going through
secretary
her.
first. So you'd almost need almost like what you have today, like a suite where you face
to
the
go-
secretary first before you get to the
to go
principal
through her, yeah.
or
The other-
assistant
the oth-
principal.
The other thing too, they did have doors on the bathrooms there, but the staff said, or actually the principal
yeah.
said that he was in the process of trying to get the doors removed.
Right.
We saw that in Colchester too, where you go in,
Yeah.
you go
Right.
make a U-turn and you're in the bathroom, so you're still private.
Like
but
a
it's-
wraparound.
Right.
You know, we're talking about
like
like
a
non.
It's
stadium would
also
have, yeah.
save some money too there too, all those
Right.
doors.
And you can hear what's going on in there.
Yeah.
Right,
And you can smell
and
what's
you
coming out of
hear-
there.
Exactly. That's my point. You
shouldn't
can
say
hear
that.
what's going on in
You know
there.
what I mean? Okay. Any other discussion on this? Okay. Do we need to talk about the property line discussion? I think we covered most of it.
the only thing I would add is just the baseball field size and wanting someone from Parks and Rec to opine on, what's the minimum need. If it's just middle school programmatic, it may be a certain length. If it's going to be used for other outside town purposes or
Right.
visiting, group purposes, maybe it needs to be at a, I don't know, high school or full length. So that's why I think in the pictures there was like 2 cones.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know, maybe it won't
I mean, it
matter,
should be
but-
at a minimum what they have today, at a minimum, right? Size-wise?
Well, I mean, the thing is, today, I just think there's a lot of excess space that just happens to be there.
Right.
Maybe it won't matter, I guess, in the designs, I guess 1A and 1B that we're looking at, we're not moving the baseball field. It probably mattered more for when they were trying to reposition it, and
Yeah.
it's just like,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
it would matter, so.
I think we're good. Anything else you
No.
want to add? Okay.
Covered everything.
All right, design subcommittee. Discussion on whether or not, I think we do need a design subcommittee. I think there's going to be a lot of, just this past couple of weeks, just all the discussions that popped up. Like, I think we need a core group of people who can manage those meetings. Any thoughts against that, or anyone opposing the idea of a design subcommittee? I think just like with our selection committees, any major decision would still have to come to the whole building committee to make. So I think the design subcommittee would probably just be the ones who manage those little meetings. Maybe there's some legwork that has to be done, some research that has to get done, but any major decision would still have to be done by the whole building committee. What are some decisions that you would say that the design subcommittee can make without needing what's an example of something they would be able to decide on that the whole building committee wouldn't need to weigh in on? Is there anything?
think on a daily basis, as you say, coordinating these meetings, helping facilitate meetings with staff, discussing issues such as, do we have, lockers or not? The basic selection of materials, things
Yeah.
like that, that would,
And then making recommendations
Make-
to the building committee, right?
yeah, and then ultimately, when we get to a level of design, schematic design, before we move beyond schematics, we're gonna look at the estimate, we're gonna expect the architect to convince you that that is the design that you, the full committee, want.
Right.
And then you're gonna give them the green light to proceed.
Okay.
But there's a lot of smaller details along the way that would just bog down the overall
Yeah.
committee.
Right, okay. So the way I hear it then is, doing some of these, facilitating meetings with the town, with the administrators, faculty if we need to. Doing some of these research, like you noted that we need to do research on lockers, for example, as an example of something that they would do. And then bring recommendations to the larger building committee for any major decisions that need to be made on the design. Anything else that I missed?
I brainstormed something. So like the design subcommittee could help us with coming up with timelines for upcoming topics that are going to come to the full building committee so that we can make sure we invite the right community members and also highlight it for the community to attend.
I'll probably add this to the bylaws too.
And then would the design subcommittee be responsible for coordinating the community workshops with Perkins and then coordinating police chief, town engineer? Is that what we mean by staff?
Your local
Help
officials.
facilitate all that.
Why is the design subcommittee coordinating with town departments?
Like, we had that meeting on Tuesday with the town, and sometimes they just need to be pushed. And
But
like,
wouldn't Arcadis do that?
even if Arcadis did that, like, I had to go knock on Amanda's door and just, she was out, right? So I just had to work with her. But,
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily expect the design subcommittee to be arranging meetings, to be participating in meetings and, be able to, again, provide liaison back to this,
okay.
this,
So
Yeah,
not
if we
coordinate
have
the
to
meeting.
schedule meetings, then that's a full-time job.
All right, so not coordinate meetings, but just help participate in them and be the ear for the building committee.
Yeah, I would also throw out there, it might make sense to, just like Sharon's on the selection committee, for procurement, that maybe someone from the town, whether it's the town engineer, town planner, if they want, to have one town staff person beyond the design committee, just so that there's always that connectivity. At least maybe it only relates to the site, I guess when you get into, things about picking locker rooms, I don't need
Yeah.
a town planner, so
Yeah.
maybe it doesn't make sense to have it, now that I talk about it through the life of the project, I'm probably more just thinking about the site work.
Yeah.
yeah, at appropriate times that, the design team is gonna call in.
Yeah.
The appropriate authorities having jurisdiction.
Sure, so I renege
Coordinate
that,
with that.
idea.
Okay.
So my notes say participate in meetings with staff / town / administrators, researching different design options, possible selection of materials, and then bring those recommendations to the full building committee.
Yep. And any kind of research that needs to get done. Like, I think, did you say that? I think maybe you already said that, like lockers, for example.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. We're gonna research lockers?
Not the kind, but like
Whether you want them or not.
whether we want them or not.
Be, involved in the conversation with, school administration.
Someone
as
needs to go talk and say, do we want them? Do we not want them?
Look into the pros and cons and look at the research. Just
I mean, that-
because
maybe that
today
was a-
we could say
maybe
we
that was a
want
bad
them
example,
in
but-
10 years from now, there could be a reason why we need them. I want to just,
Or even just managing that discussion is happening, right? Whether or not they're doing it themselves or just.
and even tomorrow, if you guys can fit it in when you're talking to the teachers, just get their perspective has been, at least my understanding is that if we did away with lockers after COVID, they would have been happy. You just see you see a decrease in behavior. It's an increase in instructional time. You don't
But
need to make the stop.
Is there a way to find out like how many students are actually using their lockers now today?
I think Yeah, oh, yeah, we could definitely find out
I
who's
can tell
using
you
them.
hardly any are using their lockers now.
Oh, okay, I was gonna say, we could definitely, today, when I walked into it yesterday, I walked into about 15, that's not true. 8 classrooms. The kids had all their backpacks, their coats on their chairs, their backpacks on the floors, like, they like their stuff with them.
I think my kids are using their, like a classroom for their soccer bags. They all go into like a classroom after the game and get their soccer bags.
Yeah, they put them all in one place where everything could be secured, and I know,
So it's more of the sporting stuff, I think, that they
it's a
need.
sporting,
storage.
yeah,
And the band.
I think they got out of the habit of using the lockers, and then it was really not the kids so much, but it was the parents where, it's what we were used to. We had lockers. We felt like we were big kids when we went to the middle school and we had lockers, so we need to have
We
lockers.
have to decorate them.
We have to, yeah.
So sorry,
It causes more problems than they're worth.
yeah, I'd asked this of Acatus, I'd asked this about Perkins last time. Just give us an instance where you'd say, okay, let's bring this to the design subcommittee. That way we could figure out, what. I think last time it was said that there is a value in having it. Just give us a for instance.
Well, like the meeting you went to yesterday, that would be something
I
the
agree
design
with that.
committee would
My
do.
thought is, though, very early on in the site plan, it's going to be helpful because if we're going to lock down the site analysis and think about can we do this and that, we may need a couple of multiple communications between now and 2 weeks from now. But after that, once you start getting into the meat and potatoes of actually putting the building together, are you saying, hey, we're gonna look at a couple different wall materials, and then you guys can narrow it down for the committee. Is that really, I'm just saying, like, what would a real application be?
I guess, Matt, an example would be, we would have 2 or 3 different layouts of I'm gonna make this up, the administrative suite.
Okay.
Working through Dr. Macri's office and saying, here's 2 or 3 different layouts. Here's the advantages and disadvantages of each. What is the input that you would have, for
Okay.
example?
And then just thinking about that, though, my input, maybe others too, would be, well, I don't know, I'm not an administrator. I'm just thinking, but the administrators can't always be on call to answer those questions, right? So is it, hey, we're the best.
But then you would know what questions that need to get asked.
Right.
And
that's
then you'd
what I'm
find
trying
the
to
way,
get at,
right.
is saying, we can give some opinions, and then where it's like, well, maybe this is really important. We check in with Enza or check in with Blaze, get their second opinion on
Right.
it. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I envision things like, you're dealing with the building envelope. There's brick, there's block, there's metal panels and things like that. You guys are gonna come up with different options, different pricing, advantages and disadvantages. The design committee can kind of vet that out here with more detail and then bring a summation back to the full committee.
Right.
This product may be more expensive, but you're gonna get another 30 years out of it. All those type of different options that we can have long discussions on in a subcommittee that then narrows it considerably down for the full committee.
Right.
Floor finishes, wall finishes, block versus high impact sheetrock, all those different things.
Even the roofing
materials.
system, right?
Yeah.
There's a spectrum.
Single ply, whatever.
Any
the-
system, really.
Right.
So that's how I envision what a design subcommittee would do, is narrow down some of the really big ticket items.
Yep.
Vet that out with the architect and the PMs and the administration, and then try to bring a smaller summary back to the full committee.
Okay. Is there anyone who would want to be on the design
I
subcommittee?
think we have to vote on it first, right?
That we're gonna have one?
Yeah.
Oh. I thought we were gonna vote all. I thought we were just gonna do one big vote for who's gonna be on it and have it.
I will do it as a liaison to the school staff.
Do we need 2 separate votes? One to say we're
To
gonna.
establish the committee?
One to establish.
It can't hurt. Why don't we just vote to establish the committee? I make the motion to establish the
Okay, is there a
committee.
second to All in favor of establishing a design subcommittee, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Aye.
Okay, 1 nay. Anyone abstaining?
No, that was an aye.
Ken said nay.
Oh, Ken said nay. Oh, okay, sorry.
No abstentions. Okay, approved. All right, now, who would like to be on it? Or any nominations? Blaze would like to be as the liaison for the staff. Heather?
I would be on it. When I first signed up for this, I said, yeah, I would love to design, I would love to help design the middle
Okay,
school. So
John.
that's why I'm here. I
All right. We could do 4 if anyone else is really wants to be part of it.
I don't want it to be crowded. I would like to be all part of it, but I guess, you know.
I would do it, but I can't do anything before 5:30.
4:30.
Is that gonna be a conflict?
I don't know.
How have you guys engaged building committees? Would you do it on your work schedule, especially now with virtual, like doing something via Zoom, whether it's showing something visually or having a quick call?
Is 4:30 too
Right.
late?
Say Blaze can't do it during the day either.
Oh, he gets out at 2:30. Right, Blaze.
Oh,
Blaze,
I-
you're off
I-
at 2:30, right?
I just wanted to know what was generally
Typically?
done, that's all.
Blaze.
I'm sorry, what?
You're off typically at 2:30.
2:45 on days I don't have after-school meetings, which is, more up and then
Okay.
I prefer.
All right.
But yes, I am officially off the clock at 2:45 most days.
Okay, so that's fine. How about you, Heather?
My day ends at 2:30, so.
Okay. And Ken, you're free.
I can join the team. I can meet anytime.
Okay. Well, I mean, you can be on it and get involved when you can. Okay.
Compromise only, I'm sorry, can we compromise a little and sometimes do it at 2:30 and every other meeting, 2:30, 4:30, just because I love you, Kendall, and I think you have a tremendous amount of experience, and so does Blaze and so does Heather, but this is what John just saw,
Yeah.
this whole entire school get built in every single solitary
Oh, yeah.
pitfall. I would really want John on this committee. And I know I'm not a voting member, but I think it's extremely important to have someone who just lived it to make sure we do not make those same mistakes.
Yep.
Now the problem is I have to work till 3:30 to fix it.
Yeah, I know, exactly. And I know that John knows all the years, and unfortunately, I know a lot of them too. So I think it's really important that John is on this committee. I'm sorry, tell me if I'm speaking out of line.
I want to be on it, but I can't take all my.
No, you can't take your time, right?
So,
Yeah, but I mean, with a lot of
No, please.
I mean, even with a lot of the communications community work, there's still work to do outside of like the actual meetings, right? Like, so I think that, yeah, there'll be some scheduling things, but I think that your input is super valuable, and I think there's still other ways to contribute, even if you
And it wouldn't
can't
need to be
make every-
in-person meetings, so after-hour meetings don't require people to travel. That was my point too, is like you just do
Yeah.
it virtually, jump on a quick call, so.
so is the quorum 4 or 5 people? I think it's 5, right?
5.
So we don't have to worry about quorum. Okay. So, is there a motion to approve John, Ken Jackson, Heather, and Blaze as the design subcommittee?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Okay. Thank you. And then we have to elect a chair for the subcommittee. So, does anyone want to be a chair? Heather. Heather.
Okay.
Is there a motion to approve Heather as the chair for the design subcommittee? Oh, yes, you did. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Keep forgetting to wait. Okay, there you go, Heather. You're the chair for the new design subcommittee. Congratulations. All right. The rest.
Do we have, go ahead, were you gonna say that?
No, go ahead.
Were you gonna say if Perkins and Akitas needs to stay? Or?
Oh, that's what I was about to say.
That's what I was gonna say.
I was just gonna say that was my next word. The rest of the agenda is really just our stuff, so you're free to go. It's thank you for staying this late.
No.
Thank you, guys.
I
Thank
know.
you all.
Have a good night.
Bye.
You can stay.
Yeah,
You're
of course
more
you
than
can.
welcome to stay if you'd like, but you do not have to stay. Not that the communication subcommittee report is not important for them to listen to, Shannon.
It's okay. I'm
But-
not offended.
I wanted to give them the opportunity to go home. All right, let's go with communications subcommittee report.
Okay, so since our last meeting, we on Facebook ran a series of Meet the Committees. So I hope you all saw your wonderful photos out there on social media. It was very successful. We had over 4,400 impressions, and we had 850 engagements with it. So it was good, kind of re-energized the community. We did that the same time that Lisa sent out our newsletter to all Carmel Public School families, which resulted in 27 signups for our listserv. So again, getting like the community back involved. This is a key point because now we're going to start looking to community involvement with the design stage. So we were really happy with those communications. And then we're prepared to support the design subcommittee with whatever materials need to go out to for community forums and things like that.
Okay. I did like those introduction to the committee posts.
It was Heather designed all those. They came out great.
Heather. Good idea. I like them. Okay. Let's discuss special meetings. So for the interview schedule, there's a couple meetings that are going to be special meetings.
Oh, sorry, that was the last part of my report. In your packet, we put in there the look ahead. So this is what the communications committee's been using to kind of keep track of what we need to do for reports and things. But we thought it'd be helpful for everyone to have that because it includes all of what you're about to talk about, Rosanna, the interview schedules for the upcoming contractors.
So Wednesday, October 26th, looks like the special meeting to approve the shortlist. And discuss possible
Interview questions.
interview questions. We'll go through all the dates and then we can talk about if any of them need to move. Wednesday, no, that's a regular meeting. Second, that's a regular meeting. Second.
Is Acatus gonna and the curriculum's gonna weigh in at all?
They don't get to vote, but they can listen into the interviews, maybe.
I mean, with the short list creation, because they're gonna get in qualifications and
It's up to the selection committee if they want to get their input on them. I mean, there's nothing stopping them from getting input from them if they wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I'd hope they'd be at join our meetings.
Especially they've had probably experience with the different firms, so it'd be good to.
Yeah.
I'd
Participating with the selection committee when we review all of the applicants?
if
Or should it be when we do it as the building committee?
yeah, I would say I would have the selection committee go through the whole process, do all the rating first, and then get some feedback from them. I don't want what they say cloud the judgment because they're gonna be biased probably by experience, but they don't still, you know what I mean? I don't know. It just feels probably more, I don't know if the word ethical, but probably more cleaner if we just did our own assessment first and then got their feedback when you were presented to the whole building committee.
Will they be present at the special meeting when we go into executive session?
We can invite
We
them.
can always invite them into an executive session.
Yeah.
or you could just solicit, if they want to give feedback ahead of time. But
Yeah.
Where?
so obviously, I won't be at this meeting. That's why I'm just asking. I think the selection committee is going to do great due diligence. I was just thinking that maybe the partnering firms might have some other information.
Yeah.
So the short list is on 26th. Interviews would then be when?
For what, the commissioning agent or the construction manager?
Commissioning agent.
The commissioning agent interviews are Monday, November 14th.
Why are they so far off from? So their the RFQs are due the 21st. We vote on this short list of 26th, so they're aware of it, and then they get 2 weeks.
To prepare their
All
presentation.
right, yeah, okay. So that's the interview. Okay, so far we just have one special meeting on the 26th.
Yeah, and the other one's November 22nd,
November 22nd.
which is a Tuesday. That's like the Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
And that's for the finalists,
that's
CM finalists.
construction manager finalist.
Okay, so look on your calendars for November 22nd and October 26th.
November 22nd is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
It's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving?
Tuesday before.
I'm okay with that. I don't know if they'll be okay with that. Oh, that's just us selecting that. It's not. So I'm okay with the 22nd and October 26th.
And we propose that to be at the 22nd one to be at 7:30, just so that the construction maintenance selection committee can meet prior to it on that Tuesday, since the interviews are that Monday. That was just to get the goal was to get this in before Thanksgiving and get them on board in beginning of December. So that's why that's so compressed there.
Okay. Any discussion on those dates? Any other discussion, I should say? We good to vote?
Where's the interviews for
CA interviews are November 14th. It's a Monday. Oh,
No, Monday, November 21st is the construction manager interviews. Is that what you're asking about?
Monday, November 14th is the CA interviews on here.
Yes, they're on different weeks.
Yeah, we're changing it first because we would have shortlisted
Yeah,
them first.
I'm good there. And then the CM interviews is November 21st, which I can't do. I can't do that date. Crap.
Why weren't we trying to do them on like Friday the 18th? We said we wanted to have 2 weeks.
Yeah, why can't we do that on Friday?
Because we get the RFP on the 17th.
Oh,
Because remember the construction manager, we didn't go out with the RFQ combined RFP. We have to shortlist and then request the RFP.
Wait a minute. Hold on. The RFP is due on the 17th. They got 4 days to come up with their interviews. Wait, I'm confused.
Yeah, because they have that, they'll be shortlisted weeks before. So they'll have time to prepare their interviews, presentation, and their proposal.
Are we doing interviews after the RFP? I thought we just do interviews after the RFQ. I'm confused again. It's
Well-
too late now. My head's hurting. So October 28th, they come back with the RFQs, right? And then we select the shortlist on what day? October 28th, shortlist is November 1st is the shortlist?
Yes.
Okay. So then, and then give them 3 weeks, because they said they needed 3 weeks to put their whole thing together, Ken? For CMs, they need 3 weeks to put their interview stuff together? Because we gave them 3 weeks to put their RFQs together. Why do they need 3 weeks to put their interview stuff together?
The proposal. We haven't asked them, we're only asking the people from the shortlist for the proposal.
right. But I don't know. Is the proposal supposed to take that?
For the construction manager, that was the one that would be more
Well, okay.
time consuming.
They're gonna want to get a sense for what's involved. I mean, we're not gonna be giving them site plans at that.
They're gonna be responsible for $48 million.
So we gave them
That's
3
why they
weeks, 3 weeks for RFQs and 3 weeks for RFPs.
Which is different than how we ran the process for the
But the
commissioning agent.
interviews,
Like, we just 1.75% of construction cost.
No.
What other
wait
details?
a minute,
are
hold
they
on,
gonna
hold on,
consider?
hold on.
They
We're,
have to talk to all their subcontractors.
but we have to interview them before we tell them to go give us an RFP.
No, we don't. We have to shortlist
No,
them.
we shortlist them.
All right.
And
Oh, the
then
shortlist
we
goes
tell
for the
them that
RFP.
We'll get their proposal with when they interview.
when they interview.
I
And
see.
After we qualify their interview and shorten the list out further, then we open the proposal.
So why can't we do the interviews on Friday the 18th?
There's no reason we can't. Just schedule people's schedules. I mean, it's like 5 to, yeah, it's like 5 to 9, right?
The 17th? I mean, they can bring the RFPs with them to the interview, right? They already know they're going to be interviewed. Once they find out they're on the short list, they know they're going to be interviewed. So they're going to have those 3 weeks to prepare their interview.
Yeah, I'm
So
not
on the
able to
17th
participate on the 17th.
Hmm?
I'm not able to participate on the 17th.
Oh.
fine. If somebody wants to step in.
How about the 16th?
I can't because that's the week of Company and Tempo's show. Those are
And
all
we
our
don't
s-
want to do it on the 18th?
Those are all our stage rehearsals.
I want to do it on Friday.
I can't do it on the, I have a conflict that day too.
I have a conflict.
And then we have the 22nd, so you only have one day to like discuss and, selection committee meets and then right
I
after
think it's
that.
best that we discuss right after the interviews anyway.
Yeah.
Right away.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
So could we do it all on the 22nd? Could we do the interviews that day, meet right afterwards, discuss and then vote?
How many are we interviewing? 3?
3?
Hour and a half plus another, probably could,
How long did we do for the interviews last time?
half.
45-minute blocks.
Half-hour blocks?
But then you had 15 minutes to discuss.
It was 20 minutes interview and then 10 minutes in between for discussion.
Well, 10 minutes. They had their presentation plus the Q&A plus the time to
Oh,
discuss.
that's right, okay, yeah, you were,
I had allocated about an hour per interview.
or something like that.
I think it was about an hour per interview was allocated.
50 minutes and then 10 in between. I think that made it the hour.
Mm-hmm. So if you have four, right, that's 4 hours.
Right.
I mean, we don't know how many we're going to have, right? I'm just throwing a number out there, but like 3 to 4.
I mean, whether you do it all in one day or 2 days, it's time.
Yeah.
Can we do it all on the 22nd? Marathon meeting? Like today? 22nd,
We started a little bit earlier then.
yeah. 4:30?
I won't be able to get here for 4:30.
5-ish, yeah.
5 to 7. You can't get up by 5?
I work till 5:30 all day.
Oh.
But that's, so the interview,
On the selection plan.
yeah, so the interviews would be like from 5 to possibly 9, let's say. And then the selection committee would meet from like 9 to 10 to discuss and come up with a finalist and vet. And then the special meeting for the building committee would be from like 10 to 11.
I'm hoping we don't need 2 full hours to. How long did you guys take to come up with? Because you have to do the ratings and everything, right? That took like an hour.
Yeah, pretty quick.
Yeah.
Was that all?
Is this one that we want to rush?
Yeah.
I think we rated it. That's
Yeah.
what we
This is a
Lot.
I know, that's what.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that one wasn't
Well,
working.
I mean, we can keep it the way it is. It's fine.
Well, I mean, we don't have to, we can vote on possibly vote on the October 26th special meeting. We know we feel comfortable with the commissioning agent schedule, and we can take another pass at the construction manager. It's just, we need the construction, and
Yeah,
I'm
I
not gonna
think we want-
remember what Jack said about the construction manager being on board by the time an estimate needs to be put
We
together.
want to get it because
So the schematic design site will be done either right at Christmas or shortly after.
Mhm.
it took like 3 weeks for us to
And
get a
that-
contract.
Well, then they'll need the CMS board then.
Yeah.
It took like 3 weeks to get contract just for the architect.
Yeah,
I imagine construction management's going to take.
I
a while.
thought-
We should have somebody on board, say January 1st.
Okay.
no one's
So
gonna be
I
working
thought,
those
I thought Jack was telling us that we needed them on board in December because they
Yeah.
were going to do estimates in
Yeah,
December.
they need them in December.
Yeah, so I mean, that's just what this was based off of. So we kind of backed into the dates and tried to give them enough time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if we go too far past this, then we will be talking
So
January.
you and I can take another look at it.
I'm okay. I mean, everyone else is available on the 21st. I don't need to be there for the whole thing. I have a commitment at 6 p.m. that I have to go to, but that's fine. I'll be there for a couple of them. Okay. So let's vote on, at a minimum, we have to vote on the 2 special meetings. So October 26th, 7 p.m., special meeting to approve the shortlist for the commissioning agent, and November 22nd, special meeting to approve the finalists for the,
Yeah, I don't know if we need.
Hmm?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
construction managers. Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I've already shared.
All opposed,
I
say
can't
nay.
make, I can't make the 26th, but
26th of October?
October, yeah, I won't be in town. But I've already talked to the subcommittee. that
Oh,
we-
yeah, but you already have your input into the short list at that point. Okay. I'm sorry, was there a second? We did that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All opposed, say nay. Okay, all right, so 2 special meetings added to the agenda. Okay, oh gosh, it's so late. Last thing on our agenda is to go over the 2023 schedule. I don't think I have any problems, with these dates. When's the last day of school? June? Do you know, Lisa?
I think I did it so that way we were all set, nothing would interfere with anything that's going on with August.
No April vacation.
No, and then the only thing I went to August, because once, next month, they should be voting on the new district calendar, then I can input dates from,
Yeah.
September to December.
Okay, so right now it looks like it's June 14th.
Yeah.
June 14th. Okay, good.
Per
So
Heather.
it's not the last week of school. Perfect. Okay. Any
I think overall, the schedule looks good. If I recall, the town council meetings are the second Wednesday
Yeah.
of the month, so it doesn't appear that
they interfere?
we will run into any challenges there. So
Good.
that was the only kind of like obvious conflict I could think of.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the 2023 schedule up to August 16th? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Okay. And then,
Wait,
no,
time out before you go on to the next one. Just on the 2022 schedule, we do have a conflict on December 13th. We've been kind of holding off on looking at that one. But it looks like we might need it if we really are
what's
going to
the
be
conflict?
compressed for time. So
Town
on-
council.
it conflicts with town council.
Town council and Board of Ed are on the same day?
Board of Ed is Tuesday the 13th.
I thought town council was the 14th.
Sorry, town council is the 14th. Board of Finance is the 15th.
Oh,
Right
yeah,
now
we're in
scheduled
conflict with the Board of Ed because
Yeah.
we moved from the 14th to the
Yeah.
13th to not be in
Right.
conflict with
Oh,
town council.
That's
Right.
fine. We can just send a,
And
in.
now we're in conflict with the Board of Ed.
Yeah,
So.
and
we
the
can
Board
just-
of Ed would be meeting here. So
we'll
we'd
just
have
have
a physical space problem.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, but then would we have the audiovisual? But then you wouldn't, no.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'd have to move our meeting date that day?
Would we just move back to the 14th and
Why didn't we do the 14th?
Town
town
council.
council?
And we didn't do the 15th because
Board of Finance.
we don't need to worry about Board of Finance.
Well, Matt's gonna be there.
Oh. Dang it. Forgot about you and Board of Finance.
Wow.
Yeah, would you rather be, Matt?
I think it's pulled up, Matt, because of the holidays. Is what I'm assuming.
Do we?
Yeah, it's earlier than normal.
How about the? I mean, we
Yeah, there's
could.
nothing on the 12th right now.
We can move it out a week because we don't have another one until January 4th. Like do it on the 21st.
But are we gonna need that day? Like, are we gonna need?
Well, then we'll do a special meeting if we need to.
Okay, so, yeah, we were targeting to onboard the construction manager and the commissioning agents at that meeting, if possible,
Which meeting?
that Tuesday, the 13th,
There's nothing on here about that.
Commissioning agent is
Oh.
the second,
on here.
and CM would be.
Yeah, it was just that would just be the first meeting
Yeah,
that
just-
they could attend.
Oh,
Right, right.
Yeah,
that's
but
all.
we'll, assuming that they even have contracts by then, we can get them in. The design subcommittee can get them engaged with
Okay.
people.
Okay.
So my recommendation is moving it to the 21st. And that'll be our last meeting of the year.
Okay.
Any thoughts? Issues?
I do not like the week before Christmas, that week.
Same.
Yeah.
Okay. We don't have to.
There's just, that week is always.
Well, we don't want
nuts.
Friday. We don't want.
I'm probably gonna be on vacation. So
How about why don't we do Monday the 12th?
We can.
we can?
Oh, wait. Hold on. Make sure I'm not teaching that day. I'm teaching that day. Unless we start at 7:30, which is late. Oh, what time do we normally start? 7?
Yes.
Yeah,
It's fine.
we can do that. Start 7:30 on the 12th?
I might be out for that one, but yeah.
Sounds good.
So moving 12:13 to 12:12
Yep.
at 7:30.
At 7:30.
Yep. Make a motion to reschedule our December 13th meeting to the December 12th at 7:30 p.m.
Is there a second? Are you a second over there? Matt. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Okay. Any other comments, updates? There's no public comments. No one's here. Any comments, updates, or anything else anyone wants to bring up? Going once, going twice. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. You can stay here. Okay. Have a good night, everyone. Meeting over.